signature twice. If you're a voting member here, up here, and then down there. And then you'll have to do it again and again.
Have been, but I don't know if it's current.
Okay. That's Robert Thompson.
Yeah, that's it?
That's up for you.
Okay.
That's one.
Every time I see the temperatures, I think, it's going to be 80-something here. And then it's not. It's like, whoa, this is good.
Yeah, we are live right now.
Camera live?
But I'll still give my 2 cents, of course.
Okay.
Quick, you also need to sign this.
And then pass it along.
Once it's signed, we can get started.
So before we convene, I just wanted to say that Kyle is making a copy of what I've put together for the taxpayer that's appealing. We didn't think of that, but so he just ran to make one for Paul.
All right, very good.
Okay, Paul, we're self-centered,
Very tight public.
but we'll try to get better.
Tonight's hearing, because I did receive like an email.
Oh, I don't think there is a place for that.
There
But we
go.
could do it tonight. We could do it tonight.
Well,
Thank you.
You don't like the hat?
Oh, okay.
Take the hat off,
What,
Dave.
what if it was a yarmulke?
as far as comments,
That would be different.
Oh,
Well, depending on,
that depends on what my current religion is.
I guess that would go.
depending on,
At any
I'm
point,
speaking from my school.
Either
so.
one, 'cause it's live stream. We're live now, April sent me a message, so. Whenever the board prefers to do those, we do have an appointment for Mr. Wanos at 1, so maybe we do those
tonight.
at 6, yeah.
Right.
Okay, perfect.
Are you a voting member?
I'm not a voting member.
I just thought I'd double check.
Should I be up here? Okay. I wasn't sure.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Cook County Board of Appeals and Equalization today, Thursday, June 23rd at 1 o'clock p.m. As we get started today, we have a roll call that's being passed around, a sign-in sheet, and every one of the commissioners should have made sure to sign that and also indicate whether you've had the training or not. For this. And we are very fortunate in the fact that we have 3 of our 5 commissioners who have had training. It's only required that there's 1. And people also have the opportunity to refer to the online manual or handbook that we have from the Minnesota Department of Revenue. We're here today to be in compliance with Minnesota Statute 274.014. And I would like to thank, on behalf of our board, all of the people who have worked so hard to make this process smooth and organized. I'd like to thank all of the people in the assessor's office for all the printing, the organizing, phone calls, and all the information that you've provided to our community. I think the videos have been very helpful, all the public releases that have been made. We've had several public press releases that have gone out. And so today we appreciate that work. And I also appreciate those of you who are taxpayers who are coming here to present your appeal. We are very interested in listening to your concerns and interests. As we get started, we have a 1 o'clock presentation, and Paul Wanus contacted the assessor's office and asked to have this time for the appeal, and we'd like you to move forward and we'll begin our presentations.
So I think you get the stage first. We had originally outlined 15 minutes per person, and we don't have one booked till 1:30, so there's a little bit of flexibility there, but ideally it's 5 minutes you, 5 minutes for me, and then the board can kind of deliberate and ask questions for 5.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds perfect. I'm Paul Wanus. But I'm representing our family in this appeal, if you will. And I'm driving up here today. I left Minneapolis this morning, and I'm driving up here today, and I'm thinking to myself, because Bob had asked me if I was going to present any new information. I'm like, well, not really, and I don't really have anything new. And then I was reminded of a story where one of my neighbors was teaching football to the kids, and they were 12 years old, and he kept on going, run it again, run it again, practice and practice. And this one kid, big kid, he was hoping he was going to be the star player. Well, it happened to be that he was smarter than he was physical, right? So he was a big kid, but he was really intelligent. And he looked at the coach and he said, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. And so this is a 12-year-old kid. I hope I'm not insane because I don't have anything new to present. All I'm doing is presenting what, and the summary that Bob's printed here is pretty accurate in terms of what we're looking for, or what the definition of what we want is different than what you guys want. So I'll just paraphrase and make it pretty quick for you. So over the years, I think my dad purchased that property in the mid-70s, and it had, for a long period of time, we were under the assumption that there was a road that went all the way out to this point of that lake, and I have a map of it that shows you what it is. But anyway, there's a point on Dyer's Lake. It was a mile-long road. Bob Silver put it in. And my dad had bought the property on a contract for deed in the 70s from a lady by the name of Burberry or something along those lines. She had the easement. When the contract got fulfilled, that easement never followed the property. So for a better part of 40 years, we just used the road and we're probably out of compliance. When we finally figured it out, and I think it's back when the surveyors went through, because the lines were wrong back in like 2010 maybe, or was that 11? Was that when they did it? When, they went through and reassessed it, or redefined the property lines, and I have that information here too. Anyway, we figured out that road was not really, we didn't have an easement for all of it. So then we appealed to try to get a road through, failed with some of the property owners, but I was able to get both Erie Mining and Cliffs to give us easements going 2 directions off of the Kramer Lake Road. One of the directions had a road, but then that hits the property owner that won't allow us through, and then rejoins our road and keeps going again. So we really can't use that one. The other one, the other easement, is a legal easement with no road. So I guess my biggest, hardest thing in the evaluation is it's relatively landlocked. We went to the city of Schroeder and said, hey, is there something we can do? They said, yeah, you can come in off of Sugarloaf Road and you can come through our 240s and you can join in. Well, Jesus, I mean, another mile-long road. It's probably nowadays got to be built to a different standard than it was in the 70s, right? So dollar starts ringing, and then we don't know what that's going to look like for a piece of property that, quite frankly, we don't use. We don't hunt on it. We don't do anything. It just sits there. It's eye candy. It's been eye candy. It's one of those cute little properties. I don't know if you're familiar with Dyer's Lake, but it's just not developed. It's a really cute little lake, and it's just something that sits there. At $600,000, which was last year's number, $670,000 for the 4 parcels, we feel that's pretty fair. In August of last year, my dad passes away. And so this family trust then has to get an evaluation on the property for estate purposes. So we call 3 different people. We find one finally that will do it. Bob's not happy with her report. And she came in at $370,000. Quite frankly, we weren't either, because we were looking for a higher appraisal, because that's stepped up gains moving forward. Everyone would have been happy. But for IRS purposes, that's what we use. So she comes in at $370 back in August of last year, like at the end of August. And then now we get this, the first blast that excited me was the first one that came through. The 4 parcels came in at 1.2. So that, you get to an elevated, like, whoa, that's really high. And so now the, what I'm calling, we joke in our family, is the Craigslist number now is 9, and that's no offense, Bob. But it's our family joke that it's, what is it now, 985 it got dropped down to. still significantly higher than either of the two numbers previously. We understand that numbers go up. We understand what's going on. I made the appeal previously, and you know, if it's 965 or 985, we would gladly sell it to the county. Yours, knock yourself out. We'll pay the closing costs. Life would be great. End the story. If you really think it's worth that much. I've contacted 5 realtors. One, I called twice and never called me back. I've got Red Pine, they're interested. I've got the people at Timberwolf. He met at the property with me. And I had my sister with me because I'm trying to make sure that I don't taint things for our family when we start having conversations. So my sister met John. And it's almost as if John felt sorry for us because we were going to sell the property, because it's just too much. It just gets to the point where, and he was asking us, what do you think you can get for it? Well, I said, well, based on what the county's saying, you know, it should be $1.2 million to cover your expenses, and then we end up at a 965 number for our family. That'd be great. So he was like, yeah, I don't know. Do you have any comps? And I gave him a copy of the appraisal, and he said, well, yeah, that's exactly the way I would have done it. Quote unquote. I don't have it in writing, Bob. It's all just hearsay for you guys. But that was one comment. The other one I got was the guy from Odyssey down in Two Harbors, and I could barely contain him. He's jumping up and down, ready to split it into parcels and make it into something. So he's really excited for the opportunity. So of the people I've met, there's, you know, different personalities, do different things. So one's excited. The other one that we contacted was the lady, Beth Thompson was her name, and I think Bob states on the one of his articles here, with no Lakeshore sold for $670. I think it's the first bullet point after number 5, or the first paragraph after bullet point 5 there. I figured success breeds success, so I contacted that realtor to ask her if she would be interested in representing us. Emailed her multiple times. Got through the process, gave her all the information and pictures. She's from Minneapolis, has a place up here someplace along the shore, and it sounds as though that was, and I'm just going to paraphrase, I think that was kind of an inside track deal, that piece of property. Somebody knew a partner that was going to know somebody that knew somebody that would buy it, because when I presented ours to her, she's less than enthused to try and sell something that large, all contiguous, landlocked, with no lake views, and only lake, and just a lake. Lake Superior was the goal on this other piece. That 670 is what she told me. So at this point, I'm at a loss. I have many pictures. The biggest one for all of the realtors was that the property's landlocked. There is no road access. There is, like I stated earlier, I have legal easements going through there, but as soon as you cross into our property through the easement, the only way to really gain access to the full property would be to put in a bridge, because it goes over the outlet of the lake. And I think we'd have to put in a pretty substantial bridge as well. So anyway, that's been all of their kind of step backs are that. I've also contacted Minnesota Land Trust as an alternative to all of this, to talk to those folks. I'm going to meet with them later to find out, after I meet with you guys, to see where this all goes. But I don't think you win in Minnesota Land Trust. I don't think that the taxpayers of Cook County will benefit from a transaction like that, because I think you guys get reduced. But I don't know that for sure yet. I got to dig into that a little further. So I don't know what that means exactly, but I can get more information, but I'm talking to them as well. So anyway, and apparently there's a meeting here on the 31st of July, I think, in Grand Marais at the Heritage House for that land trust people. In any case, my options are that we believe, to make it real simple for you, I've got spreadsheets on it all to make it simple. 859 makes us pretty happy. We go away, we're about, what, $120,000 away from one another. I did my appraisal based on a 26% increase, not quite 30, because it's not all lakeshore and some of it's not buildable. There's some high ground on it as well, some inclines on the front side of the lake. But in either case, we feel that that's a number that would be of fair value as an increase over last year, if you will. And then that would be our contention. The rest is up to Bob and the crew.
Thank you very much. Mr. Thompson?
Yes, so thank you, Madam Chair. So I did put together a packet here, and I'll try to go through it somewhat efficiently and still effectively. So, Wanos contacted our office. It was, originally 1.2 some million, and we looked at it, and essentially what we did is this second page in the packet is showing lakeshore front foot values. And, in most assessment years, we're not going in and adjusting every single lake in the county. We might be kind of spot adjusting Lake Superior and some of the more popular lakes, and some of those more remote rural lakes don't get those adjustments every year. But in the 2021 study, all the lakeshore in the whole county, every single lake with private ownership on it had some type of an adjustment on it. This shows where Dyers Lake is in relation to Pancor, Gust, and those other lakes, just as a comparison of the units that are adding up to total that market value on the Wanos property. So that's the reason for the large increase. And, I know Mr. Wanos had mentioned the 30% increase average in the county as a point of interest. That was for all property in Cook County, and lakeshore property, almost every single case, they went up more than 31%. They were above that average. There were a number of properties that didn't have adjustments on, vacant land up off of the grade. There was no land adjustment. They got zero increase. So the average is just a data point that was, a publicly shared data point across the state of Minnesota, because it was a pretty interesting large increase for the state. As far as the appraisal goes, I don't feel it is a very accurate representation of the value of the property. For this appraisal, the intended use was for the estate. The appraisal also it appraised 4 individual tracts of land as one. And then in the comment section of the appraisal, the appraiser said it was difficult in finding a larger or a superior size property with lakeshore, a sale that they could use to base their valuation off of. Whereas if it was just done as 4 individual parcels, like it's legally titled, it would have been much easier to find those superior comparables. In fact, they ended up going to Babbitt to find a larger property, a larger sale, and didn't do any adjustment for location. And, I think most of us will agree that property on the Iron Range isn't worth what it's worth in Cook County. Aside from the appraisal not representing to me what a good market value is for January 2nd, there is one thing that's interesting in the appraisal that I wanted to point out, and, Mr. Wanos did confirm it, that there are legal easements to the property. So, that's the most difficult thing to get in most cases. It's expensive to put a driveway in, but certainly the most difficult challenge is getting that legal access. So this is the first page of the appraisal, and essentially the second page of the appraisal is going to be, real small print, but the second to the bottom paragraph, it talks about there are access easements to the property that run along the lot lines of 2 other parcels. Please see the attached easement map. I didn't attach the whole appraisal. This is actually what we had pulled out of the appraisal as the most important stuff. But, again, I sent an email to Mr. Wanos asking him to check with the appraiser and see if she would provide some explanation of why she did 4 parcels as one and how that would affect the value. And her response was that she wasn't going to provide that information because it's not a tax appeal appraisal. It was done for an estate purpose. So, I think the credibility of the appraisal is in question. Additionally, Mr. Wanos pointed to that bullet point under number 5. The sale of the property that, in his opinion was kind of like a setup or like an inside deal where something where it was like a relationship or there was something pre-established. That property was on the market. It did sit on the market for a little while before it went pending, but it wasn't real long. I do have a map here, if you guys can find that map. That shows the relation, location-wise, of the Wanos parcel around Dyer's Lake with 256 acres, and then the parcel that was down along the bluffs, along the hillsides of Highway 61. And that property sold for a little over $3,000 an acre with no lake shore. And that's what's interesting to me is, you know, with no lake shore, this property sold for the exact dollar amount we had that valued at last year. I think that, you know, this land does have some advantage being right off Highway 61. And probably has some hillside views of Lake Superior, but equally, you know, the lake shore frontage of a private lake, you know, that's on the grid. Well, public lake, but not a lot of development or ownership. There's one cabin on the lake
Public
shore.
lake, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, there is a public access on the lake.
Yeah.
So, you know, with all the information that we looked at, I actually put together comp grids on each parcel, well, 3 of the 4 parcels. I put comp grids together on the lakeshore parcels, and those are attached behind the field cards. Those look like this, and each one of them I've highlighted that indicated value for the parcel. We use standard adjustments for like acreage and front footage and differences. In our assessment record, we've accounted for the lack of the access, the road access. I mean, if you had 3,500 feet with road access all the way through, it would be even more valuable.
Well, yeah, and I'd
Yeah.
develop it too, yeah, if it had all of that there, Bob.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, but the goal
So-
is not to do that, right? But a guy could.
So, yes, so we have accounted for that in a discount on the base rate. And then another thing that I printed out for Mr. Wanos parcels is, what year did you guys take over as owners from your father, or inherit?
No idea.
No idea. It's been a while?
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, over 30 years.
okay. So, yeah, I do have the valuation history. I don't know if you saw that graph, but this is something I've done for a couple of the appeals in the county, especially down in Schroeder. Schroeder saw a large increase. If you look at it, typically it's following the county market value trend. And that's what I would have to say about this. This property was valued over $1 million back in the peak of the market in 08, 09. And in a lot of cases, we're well above that. In fact, the county's total value is, you know, $300 million higher than we were in the 09 peak. So there's a lot of information there, a lot to digest, but ultimately, what it boils down to is the equalization aspect of this meeting is that this lakeshore front foot value was finally equalized with similar lakes in the county. And that's how we end up at this number. I mean, 260 acres with 3,500 front feet is a pretty substantial piece of land. I know Mr. Wanos had proposed a number, it was 859,000, and I think that number was based off of the analysis he did back at the Schroeder Local Board of Appeals meeting. They did not offer any reduction to the property. In fact, after you had taken off, they had some discussion about the Michael Freed donation of land. He donated thousands of acres that technically he sold, or I don't know if it was a sale or donation, but and then some of those parcels that had been selling multiple times around that parcel that sold for $670,000. I mean, it sold just a couple years earlier for $200,000, and that's just what this market is right now. I don't know that there's a single listing available in Schroeder. A rare piece of land like that is valuable. It's really valuable. And just like any other really rare thing, it increases its value,
I
so.
would expect realtors to be excited then when you meet them. I mean,
I would too.
I would really expect that to be a higher level of interest if we say we're willing to sell and. we
So
want
you
to
did
sell.
mention that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The intent of meeting every one of them was to list that for 1.2 was our goal. I gave them the number, and every one of them said, the deal breaker is that there's no road and there's no access. Well, there's illegal access. And I brought them all the way back to the access points to show them where it was. I mean, we met on the property, short of walking the whole thing. And I'm not trying to
So I'm.
diminish the
I'm-
results. It's
I'm
just
almost
odd.
wrapped up with my comments. So I guess, and my response to that is, in this market, I'm shocked to hear that realtors are turning down the listing.
They didn't turn it down. They're just not excited about it. No one's excited about trying to.
Yeah, and so, you and I, after you had talked about, you said that you had two realtors that basically said they wouldn't list it, and I said, please call some of the West End brokerages. I don't reference any
Yep.
particular one broker, that wouldn't be ethical. But as far as I know, there hasn't been a major attempt to sell this property.
No, other than for me to meet with them.
And that's not the point of it. It's just to use that as the argument that realtors are not interested. In this market, without a single listing in Schroeder, like you said, it's hearsay, and I question whether or not that's accurate.
Of all the conversations we've had together, Bob, what ends up being the fact is that you're always right.
In my opinion.
And I can't believe that, because valuations like this are somewhat based on opinion. So you can't be right all the time. And what I hear and what I meet people, and then I ask my sister when we get done with deals, hey, what did you think of that last interview with that guy? I think he feels bad for us, and I don't think he's interested in doing the job. It's not just me. But and we could all have varying opinions and varying thoughts on this stuff. I just think it's too high. If it is that great, like I've said before, terrific. If it is, more power to us. That's great. We'll sell it. But I just think that we won't sell it for a number like $859. And I think that's more reasonable. And I think that's where it would sell anyway, even though you think it would sell for more. And that's great. I think that's where we're going to settle in at. But I don't want to go down that path if I can avoid it, and we'd certainly like to keep it.
Right, well, would any of the commissioners like to have any questions or comments that they'd like to make?
Madam Chair? Thank you.
Commissioner Starr.
I am familiar with that little lake. It's a great little panfish lake.
Mm-hmm.
The road that goes in there, is that a public road?
Mm-hmm.
The house that's on the left, is that part of your,
No, that's Swanson.
okay.
Yeah.
So they're not involved in this at all?
No.
So that road that goes in there and goes around to the, little bit to the right, is that what you're talking about, an extension to develop, or is it to the left, a road that you thought was going to be your road? Where would the road be to develop these parcels of
Oh, I
land?
don't know where the road would go. So I would,
Oh.
Pat, if I were me, I'd probably take the path of least resistance and come in through Schroeder's
Oh.
property, would be what I would do. Even though the easement exists, you have to go over an outlet to the lake, and I think the bridge would be an obstacle to get over that piece of property. You could still get into that property, build one cabin there, and then come in from Schroeder on the other way without having to go over a inlet or an outlet to make it developable, if it were me. That would be my approach.
And you appeared before the Schroeder Township, and they did not give you any reduction?
They did not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. That was similar to the insanity plea. I haven't done anything.
Are there any other questions that commissioners have? Commissioner
Just a
Mills.
comment, as far as private, public, all waters, navigable waters in Minnesota are public waters, so just wanted to point that out. I think the intention of Assessor Thompson was just to say it's,
It's a public access, though. This lake actually has a launch of public access.
yeah, I think Assessor Thompson's point was just about the control of the lake shore, and it's pretty exclusive. But yes, the public can certainly access this public
With the
body of
exception of
water.
Lake Superior in your comment.
Sure,
Right.
that's international, yeah, thank
Very
you.
good.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Hawkins?
So I get the concept of 4 parcels, could have evaluated each one separately, and that could raise the value if their appraiser had done that. Because of, you're basing your opinion off of, or your appraisal, off of what potentially could happen, not what is currently happening. Is that correct?
That's not correct.
Okay.
Nope. The land
Help me
tables.
understand.
Yeah, the land tables are set off of sales, historical sales. That's how the sales study works. You look at historical sales and you set land rates. So if I'm setting land rates on comparable lakes, I have to adjust all of them. The point is not to adjust the properties that have sold, but to adjust all similar properties the same. So the front foot values were adjusted based off of sales.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
And I think
Commissioner
what
Mills.
Commissioner Hawkins is asking about too has to do with separate parcels, separate legal parcels already versus all one legal parcel. Is that what you were?
Well, yeah, I'm
So
trying to
that, I think that was the
understand.
first part of the question, and it's not that the value would have been increased. The appraisal would have been higher if it was done that way. We've made the same argument to the Forest Service on the Boundary Waters appraisal, that appraising it as one large tract of land isn't as accurate as looking at each individual parcel. So this is 4 legal descriptions. There's 4 separate titles to 4 separate tracts of land. That's how they're assessed. I don't know if combining them is an option, but that would certainly be something we typically recommend if somebody wants to combine them. They may or may not ever be able to subdivide them. I mean, a chunk of land like that, I think you do retain some rights. I think it's a 20-acre minimum, and I don't believe any of these parcels are less than 20 acres. So the combination is an option. We also recommended a conservation easement if he, if his wishes are to keep that property from ever being developed. The Minnesota Land Trust does offer compensation for those easements. They pay you per acre based on the value of the land. And we do not reduce assessments on new conservation easements. The compensation you receive from the land trust is what the benefit you receive. There's actually a Minnesota statute. Any conservation easement enrolled after 2013 is not supposed to affect the assessed value. It's Minnesota 273.114, I believe.
And you're probably right. I haven't looked into it for a long time, so yeah, you're probably right.
Thank you.
I would say that if we did break it up, one of the problems even selling the property is that we want to sell it as one, because you'll get yourself into even more problems trying to, if like the first lot doesn't sell and the second, you end up landlocking each parcel as they go out of there even worse than it is today without a road or an easement going through. We'd have to create some kind of magic to make that happen. So our goal would be to sell it as one unit, as it's been appraised earlier, and then go from there, if that were the case. Because it just gets more difficult. The road would have to come through the 4 different parcels to make it work.
Well, at this point, I appreciate all the conversation and the good questions that we've had, and it's an appropriate time to take some action.
Well, Madam Chair, just based on the analysis of the other lakes and historical sales, I think the price per footage makes sense here, and it is a staggering value, but it follows the data. I too would be sad if I had to sell that, but it is quite a unique parcel, and frankly, out of my price range, but worth every penny, I'd say. So I would suggest, if you need to sell it, going higher than what Assessor Thompson is suggesting. And yeah, I don't have my finger on that pulse, but it seems to be in line. So I'd make a motion to accept Assessor Thompson's recommendation there.
Okay, so that's a proposed valuation of $985,600. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Commissioner Mills.
I just want to point out how unique this situation is, I feel like. Again, it's pretty special, and and it boggles my mind, and I think you're in a good position. I'm sorry that it's a painful one at this point too,
The
so.
sad thing is, anyway, I'll just move on.
But that was my only.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, sir.
Yep,
Appreciate
thanks.
your time. All right. We'll now move on to our second appointment, which is Don Perrin, 2 Tom Lake parcels purchased in November of 2021. And if Mr. Perrin, you would come forward to the microphone, please.
Not quite sure the procedure. I do have some copies of maps, aerial photos I did.
All right.
I may approach.
Thank you.
Just happened to grab 6 of them, so I guess that's good.
Thank you. We'll share.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us, and you can proceed.
Thanks. I will say in advance that not only am I going hard of hearing, but I got some plugged ears today, so I might talk louder than necessary. So I got the evaluation, rather shocked actually, and not shocked in the sense that it's totally outrageous. It's just, I bought this property in November of last year, and I paid, after it being sitting on the market for a long time, paid quite a bit less than what they've been asking for it because they weren't getting any offers on it. Ended up having to buy it as both parcels because one of the parcels is not worth much on its own. You can see by the 2 parcels that are together are kind of a pie-shaped. They come back to very narrow, 60-foot wide at the driveways there. Really restricts what you can do with the properties. The property on the right is the one that everybody wanted to buy. The owners were unwilling to sell it alone, knowing that they couldn't sell the other one. Part of the reason for that is there's a circular driveway around there that kind of rings around a high, really partially swampy area, partially big rocks hanging up. And when you get to the westerly southern lot, I've kind of drawn a little marker in there. There is no shoreline. It's about 4 feet off the water, a big berm, and behind that berm drops right down 4 or 5 feet into a swale that is full of water almost continually. So there's no way to put any kind of shoreline dock or anything in that area. And I'm assuming trying to do so would require, permits, et cetera, to try to take care of something like that within the setback. So that lot in itself is worth very, very much less than the other one. Both together, the owners thought it's worth more together. They bought them together. They were made 2 separate lots in my mind because originally they could do it. They put them as 2. They couldn't sell them originally, and the same people bought both of them thinking that eventually they're going to put, one cabin kind of in the middle. There's more utility, I guess, with the 2 lots if you have them together. So when I got the valuation, and it turned out it went up from November, and I was called by the tax department saying, how much did you pay for it? I paid $151 for both of them. Was there any personal property? Yes, there's a dock worth $1,000, so basically I paid $150 for both lots, to find out that they were all of a sudden valued at $35,000 or $34,000, whatever that is, more. Shocked me a month and a half later. So I think that they are overvalued. I did talk to Mr. Thompson. He, initially basically poo-pooed me and said, why don't you call back when you've settled down a little bit and think about it? And I said, it's been a week since I've seen it. I did settle down. This is ridiculous. He did offer at some point, he said, maybe I should go out and look at the property to see what you're talking about. I said, please do so. At the time, I just had knee surgery. I couldn't get out much myself. But these were sold as 2 lots because there's more value. The first thing he wanted to know is, well, why don't you come down and request that they be put into 1 lot? Why should I go through that? I don't see a need to. And then his response, of course, was, see, they're worth more separately than they are together. No, absolutely not. They're what I paid for them. They were on the market for 3 years. Nobody ever offered anything for both of them. They tried to offer to buy just the 1 good lot. They wouldn't do it because they thought there was more value in both of them. I'm not going to tell you what I think each individual lot is worth. I think both of them together are worth what I just paid for them, $150,000 basically for the lots themselves. listening to all the, this is, you know, watch this video and this is how we do it, we don't chase this sale, we don't chase that sale. It's, to me, it's a bunch of nonsense. Market value has to start somewhere for a lot, and if you have no sales for 30 years, maybe you need to start looking at things that are happening around you. But every one of these lots on that lake is very much an individual lot that sometimes have been on the market for years, and people have taken into account many, many different things. The second page, and this is what confused me, I've been told, well, you have 600 feet of shoreline. Yes, 600 feet of shoreline that you can't get to unless you're in a boat outside. You can't put a dock on it, you can't build on it, you can't do anything with it. 600 feet of shoreline. The second page is just down the street a couple hundred yards. It's got over 1 acre more than what I have on either of these lots, and it's 1,200 feet of shoreline, and they value it at 108,000. 10,000 more than what he's valuing, you know, my more expensive lot at. To me, an acre of property and 600 feet more shoreline should equate to much more if mine is the right value. So I think, first of all, it's unfair to look at the number of feet on the shoreline, the square footage. When you look at the shape of the property, the first 50 feet, I can't do anything, it's too narrow. The last 100 feet, I can't do anything because of the shoreline. Now I have to get a well in there, I have to get a septic in there, and without using them together, I don't think it will be feasible. I have no intention, I got 5 kids, never selling them. I don't think I need to come down and say put them together. Of course, it's gonna be easier for me with owning both properties to put a septic without going through setbacks and all that kind of stuff. So in my mind, I just bought the property. That's what it's worth. It's a very distinctive property. I like the property, but I wasn't paying any more for it. That was my last offer, and I walked away, and nobody else had ever offered more than that, and that's the bottom line.
Thank you very much. Mr. Thompson?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. So I do recall the conversation. I think he was pretty close to how the conversation went in describing it. The problem, you know, I understand where he's coming from, a November sale and a January 2nd value date. The problem is we had sales trending up. I did put together a couple of graphs, and I don't know if you guys have those handy, but Tom Lake, I think 2 years ago, there were probably 6 lots available. Over the course of the last 3 years, there's definitely been more than 5 lots come available on Tom Lake, and a couple of them sat there for years. Now, today, there's not a single vacant lot available on Tom Lake. It's kind of like one of those things that as the inventory diminishes, that's where the values go up, and that's what the entire country saw last year with unprecedented value increases, is there's no inventory, so people are getting what they're asking. The 2 most recent sales, one of which is the second page of the provided information here. You know, I see it shows he's rating 1,200 feet. We have that one assessed as 290 feet. We usually do a straight line measurement. We just go straight from the one end of the lot to the other end of the lot. This peninsula, I looked at it, it's essentially cut off by water. I think, like you say, all of the shoreline on that side of Tom Lake around that area is kind of hard to access. There's certainly people who have overcome that and put docks out. But this peninsula is essentially separated from this lot, which then if you start looking at that lot, where this peninsula is separated by mostly wet underwater, it's kind of like a little flowage through there. It's probably harder to tell on his photo. I don't know if I have a photo of that one up close. I don't. But you know, that one, it has just as much challenge with developing a single parcel, which that one did sell for 128,000, I believe. So 129. So that sale is reflected in our trend as the highest one up at the very top. And, you know, we're valued almost, well, $30,000 below that on both these parcels. The second most recent sale, it was 115,000, and it had basically a large shed with windows on it. We have a value of less than $15,000. So if you extract the building value, the land of that parcel sold for 100. Then the more recent sale after that is the 2 parcels at 75 each. And then prior to that, it was a sale at 89.5. So, you know, part of, I think, the reason why the price per parcel was less is because it was two. It's kind of like when you buy in quantity, you get a little bit lower rate typically. And I think that with the demand drying up, the values have gone up. Essentially, you know, I looked at the parcels and I didn't find a reason to make any kind of reduction. And a lot of times when you hit that wall where, let's say you're looking to see, you know, this guy just paid this much for this, why is it valued higher than that? And really what it is this trend of sales. It's the sales that have been occurring within the taxing district and the lakeshore parcels. And if we were to reduce all of Tom Lake to get his value close to what he paid for it, we would be reducing 3 sales below what they sold for. So, you know, to fix one, you destroy 3. And that's the problem when we're putting our assessment together is, yeah, you can try and fix one value, but by doing that, you might make 3 other sale ratios go off. And that's exactly how I look at it. When I look at it, I did put together this map, which shows the parcels, you know, they are concaved out into the lake. They're not, you know, back in the corner. One of these parcels that, you know, back in, 2016 would have sold for $40,000. I think together, these parcels make a pretty nice build site. And I did recommend the combination as a solution to the valuation concern. And, I think one of the things you mentioned is that, you know, if you're planning on building well, septic and all that with your setbacks, if that dividing line down the middle was gone, you wouldn't have to meet setbacks. But as far as I understand, you can't build right in the middle of those 2 parcels the way they are, because it wouldn't meet setback. So combining them might be a solution to that challenge if you were planning on building on the lot line. But, that's another, we always offer this as a solution is, you know, I think if you combine these, I think the value would be a lot closer to the purchase price, because you would eliminate that first tier and second tier on one of the parcels, and it would all go on to the 4th tier. So I really, you know, I don't have much more. I did include a list of sales that are reflected on the chart. I included the 2 CRVs of the sales that are the most recent. I thought that I did a pretty good analysis of this to say that it's really, you know, not that out of line from what other sales of Tom Lake parcels have sold for. They're at 90. One of them is at 97,800 and the other is at 90,400. So, you know, my opinion is that I understand the sale price and I understand how recent that sale was, but it wasn't the only sale, and that's what I have to look at as the assessor. I have no strong opinions on what the board should do or act on this when I'm making no recommendation.
All right, thank you. Are there questions or comments by board members? Commissioner Swallows.
I've just always been a strong advocate of a property or any item, quite frankly, is worth whatever somebody is willing to pay for it. It's really what it comes down to. And that's why this one is troubling to me, because of that narrow time frame. And I absolutely understand your reasoning as you run through it. And the valuations that the others paid, okay, that's what those were worth, if those were also within a time period. But when you're within a couple of months, you know, and it sold for this, and then we declare that it's worth so much more. Granted, we could tell Mr. Perrin, you got a good deal, buddy. But I know that's not how he's looking at it, right? He's looking at it as, you know, this is what I paid for it. We're within this very narrow window. Why should I accept that? I mean, it should have reset to that value. That's kind of where I look at things.
Commissioner Mills.
Yeah, I got a question about that. So that's kind of, you're thinking about setting the assessed value at its sale price versus at comparables?
It has to, in my mind, it has to have an effect. Right? I understand the formulas and all these other things, so you say, well, it's actually worth this. No, it's worth what somebody just paid for it 2 months ago. The rest of it's theoretical. The sale is factual. Everything else is just an assessment based on other things. And that's where I get into the dichotomy, because I believe in the process. I absolutely do. But I do have this inner conflict that, and it always mitigates as it goes out further, right? Because, as you said, other sales, I didn't look to see exactly what those timelines were. But that's, Commissioner Mills, where I run into that, challenge in my own mind.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. And Assessor Thompson, can you respond to that line of thinking?
I'm sorry, I've been raising my hand. I'd like to respond to a couple things he said before, because you might have another question about that. I did hear him say that he's made a subjective judgment on the big parcel. I understand exactly what he's saying. 1,200 feet of shoreline, it loops around, it's not as nice as some other shorelines. So he has gone out there and looked at that property, made a subjective judgment that it's not 1,200 feet. And then he says typically lots apart are worth more. I just laid out why it's not. They would not sell them because they knew the value together was worth more than separately. I tried to buy one of the lots, the good lot, for half the amount. They said absolutely not, you got to take them both. So they saw more value because of the way they were configured as together as a group. And so hearing him say, well, he's gone out and made a judgment. He's looked at this and says, it's not worth what the numbers say. That's what I'm saying about my property. And then to hear him, talk about, well, you're not going to be able to do this, you're not going to be able to do that. I'm a real estate attorney. I know what I can and can't do and what I'll have to do in order to get a building built. I'm not worried about that today. Might never build on it. Might have a trailer out there, I'm not sure. I shouldn't be forced into it by him saying, you got to do this in order to bring your value down. Of course it's not worth that. We're not talking about that much money. I paid for it after a long negotiation, after a long time being on the market. That is the market value. And at some point, I agree with Mr. Svelson, you have to have a baseline somewhere, and it's got to be in some reality. If it's a sweetheart deal, they call me up and ask me, was it a sweetheart deal? Did you know the people? Absolutely not. They're from out of state. I have no idea who they are, and it was a long negotiation. There's no, other stuff involved in it. So I have a real hard time saying he can put numbers together and say, yours is worth this, without even looking at, the things that I told him to go look at, which might be a subjective, subtraction from the value. That's all.
Thank you. Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Mills.
Could you respond to the idea of using the current
The
sale
sale
versus
price.
historical sales and what state law requires?
Yeah, so, I somewhat agree with Mr. Perone myself. If you bought something, it's literally like 45 days, within 45 days of the assessment date, you're gonna feel like that's what it's worth. The time trend is like it's like 20%, 27%, almost 30% on lakeshore property. That's what revenue applies to the sale prices and measures against our assessment. So this one is coming in above that median. It's, their adjusted sale price at 150. I think it adjusts to about 156 using their time trend, a monthly time trend, and implying 2 months of time trend. So it's in part of the equation. It's one of those sales that falls above the median, and the median is what dictates how high, how much up or down things have to go. If you look at the time trend that I calculated on Tom Lake in specific, that time trend is much higher than 27% annually. It's nearly double, in a 12-month span. So, it is a formula versus, just a set price tag and a transaction that, like I say, I have no vested interest in what the board decides they feel like the value is. I'm explaining how we got to where we're at, and that's why it got valued where it is. It did go down in '21 from the proposed values in 2020, the proposed values were 88.5 and 82.1. Obviously, prior assessments are irrelevant, but just say they had stayed there last year and then they went up 10% this year. Is it the amount of increase or the difference of the sale price? If you're talking about the difference in the sale price, it's in my opinion mostly because there were 2 lots purchased as one transaction, and that reflects the diminishing return when you buy in bulk, you get a lower price. So, I mean, I guess I respect everyone's position on this, and I'm just providing the information of how we got to the assessment where it is. We set Tom Lake values across the board, we increased the front foot values, and that's where everything ended up to where our sales ratio was acceptable, and we didn't get a state board order. I do want to respond to Mr. Svalson's, it kind of is the same thing about setting the price at the value at the sale price. If we do that as an office, it's called sales chasing. And if you do that for your sales study, you know, it's a violation that could probably cost you some discipline with the State Board of Assessors. They call it sales chasing or sales spearing, and it's something that, you know, it's so commonly used in the assessment world that you could Google and find out more about it. But I can't just set a value at a sale price, because then it's impossible to measure the assessment, accuracy of the assessment.
Thank you for that explanation. Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, I especially appreciate that because of just familiarity around that and thought it was worth bringing up. And the thing is we need to base our decision on the best data that we have from recent sales, from including your sale, and putting that in that graph, I think, was really helpful. You know, here we are right now, this year. And to me, it sounds like the biggest complaint is based on the timing, right? It's such a short period of time. Well, what's going to happen next year? You know, are we going to cross that bridge when we get there? Or are we going to, you know, do what you're asking right now, and then next year we're going to just bounce back to what the other sales are going? So, you know, what I would think is we'd want to keep things as legit as we can as far as what's going on around. But just wanted to put that out there for consideration of, you know, what it means for the future too.
The interesting thing is what it was valued at right before I bought it. I got the tax statement and I hadn't seen it, and it said both of them together are worth $150,300 or $151,000. It was with $300 of what I just paid for it. So I'm not asking you to chase a sale. I'm saying I paid what it was valued at already, and that's what the value is because of the characteristics of the property. So enough said, other than what I'm hearing is we have to give your property a value no matter what you paid for it, whether it's arm's length or not. And it doesn't matter what you paid for it. Well, I think it does. I understand using all these numbers, but at some point they're making subjective decisions about these properties. I'm saying, I don't think he did that here, because he said he would go out and look at it, and he did not. So I don't think that second lot is worth anywhere near the first one, and they could never sell it separately. So. Enough said for me.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? If not, time to take some action. Commissioner?
I'm still confused. I understand your point there of it was only, what'd you say, 45 days?
45 days, yeah.
So that doesn't make sense to me. So is your calculation in here?
What
Understand
for the time frame?
Yeah, in 45 days.
So the different, what I pointed out, the 45 days is the sales transaction date to the assessment date is about 45 days. But that's not, the 45 days between isn't something that I had factored into anything to the equation of how we got to this value. We got to this value by raising the front foot values at Tom Lake so that the median sale price was acceptable. I can't set the value at the sale price, but the Board of Commissioners has the discretion to do so.
And I feel like it's important to follow the process, use the formula, looking at the sales of the other lots. It seems reasonable to me. It really does. Tom Lake was hot property, and it's been selling. That's why there's no inventory there. Any other comments, questions? Not, I'd like to make a motion to propose the valuation for 2022 at $97,800 and $90,400.
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. We have a motion and we have support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-2. Thank you so much, Mr. Bowden.
Expect it's what I expected. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Madam Chair, it was 4-2 Brady as a voting member as well.
So we're right on time.
Thank you. 4-2. We are. All right. We'll move forward with 2 parcels in Lutzen. Paul Nelson. Property identification numbers 27210, 2400, and 27210, 3100. And thank you both for coming this afternoon. Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, boy. Thank you.
We
can
understand.
share.
We
can share.
understand.
How should we share? The 3 of us, or?
No, I've got 5 for you,
Okay.
and I'll give Bob my copy, so that we've got
Thank you.
enough for everybody.
We can share.
Oh, all right.
We're fine.
We got pictures of the buildings here.
You got pictures?
Oh, you're skipping me.
Don't
can't
skip
reach over.
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you.
Here,
All right.
Thank you.
you can take this copy.
No, it's okay, Bob, I know him by heart.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, oh, you want to look at this, Judy? So, we're Paul and Judy Nelson, and we've lived at 2339 Caribou Trail in Lutzen for 26 years now as full-time resident. And if you want to just take a quick look at picture number 3, which is a picture of Holly Lake. I've outlined the parcel 3100 on that picture, and that's the one that we're going to talk about. There's that 3100. So our complaint involves our 2 parcels, 2400, which contains our house, and our parcel 3100, which is our swampy lakeshore, which is between our house and Holly Lake. We are not protesting the 30% increase on the property with the house on it. We are protesting the 377% increase on the swampy lakeshore parcel. We think the latter increase is erroneous and the valuation should be returned to its previous value. Our basis is the assessment is based on comparables that are not at all comparable, and also that some assumptions were made about our parcel's marketability that are completely unrealistic. Assessor Thompson's assessment claim, and I've had a few conversations with Bob with no yelling, and one with Kyle with no yelling, very businesslike. But his assessment, from what I understand, is based on 3 assumptions. The previous assessment by Assessor Todd Smith for 2017, lowering the parcel valuation to $79,700 was erroneous. Number 2 is the comparable lake properties justifying the increase are Cascade and Dyers Lakes. Dyers is coming up a lot today. And number 3, parcel 3100 is not a separate piece of property that must be valued on its own merits, but as part of an economic unit joined with parcel 2400, which contains our house. Those are his 3 assumptions. And our arguments are that during his 5-year assessment in 2017, after viewing parcel 3100, the lakeshore parcel, previous assessor Todd Smith lowered the valuation from $126,300 to $79,700 because of the swampy nature of the property. It's swamp, all of it. Okay. Number 2, Cascade and Dyer Lakes are not comparable for several reasons. Number 1, their depth is a huge difference. 2 comparisons. Maximum depth, Cascade is 17 feet deep, Dyers is 23 feet deep, and Holly is 6 feet deep. That's maximum depth. The median depth, Cascade 8, Dyers 13, Holly 3.3, and most of the lake is less than 3 feet deep. unlike Cascade and Dyers, unlike them, for most of summer, the entire east end, that's where we live, and part of the west end are choked with water lilies and pondweed. It's very difficult to even paddle a canoe through it. Finally, Cascade and Dyers can be developed. Parcel 3100, which is the one we contend is erroneously assessed, cannot be developed because it's a swamp. There's no building sites, there's no place you can put a septic system, there's no place you can build a road. If you stood on the public access right across the lake from us and looked at our parcel we're talking about, it's barely above the lake, flat as a pancake, and then the federal land behind it goes straight up. Finally, Cascade, well, it can be developed, okay. Our parcel 3100, is so wet that we had to build a 200-foot-long dock across 3100 just to reach the lake shore. The lake at the end of our dock is a foot deep in high water, and by the end of summer, you can barely float a canoe in it. You certainly can't bring a boat in any time of the year. Our entire end of the lake is 2 feet of muck, with less than 3 feet of water during high water. Our entire parcel 3100 is a swamp with many streams and creeks, draining a large fen on the west, draining the old mountain right behind us, and on the east end is a huge wetland that becomes Mistletoe Creek. Our parcel drains all that. The 2 homes on Cascade and Dyers have a dry lakefront, and people that own them can walk from their houses to their docks. We cannot. We need a 200-foot dock just to get across 3100 to the lakeshore. Our house, by the way, sits 400 feet from the lakeshore. It's not a lakeshore house. Therefore, Cascade and Dyers are not comparable in any way, other than being a lake. As to the parcel 3100 claim that it is one economic unit with 2400, which includes our house, we don't agree. The new valuation that we received from the county states that this parcel, that's all it says, that this parcel is worth $379,500, period. All on its own. It doesn't say anything that this valuation depends upon it being contingent to a nearby property that's got a house on it. It doesn't say that on that valuation. Therefore, looking at that valuation, I should be able to sell that tomorrow for $379,500. When I took it to John Oberholzer at Wolf Realty, he looked at the photos of the lake. He's familiar with it. He said, it's a swamp. Then he looked at our 200-foot dock and laughed. Therefore, according to our valuation, we should be able to sell it at that price, but we can't because it is a swamp and it's non-developable. It's not comparable to the other lakes that we're talking about here. And in reality, if we could sell that piece of property, that swamp, to somebody for $379,000, we could still live in our house. We could still view the lake. We could still access the lake through an easement, or we could go around to the public access right across the lake from us. So we don't need 3,100 contingent next to us in order for us to enjoy our lake and view it and use it. Therefore, it is not one economic unit, and parcel 3100 should be valued on what it is, 21 acres of swamp, without a developing site. Conclusion, in 2022, in combination, before the latest valuation, in combination, our 2 parcels were estimated to be worth $567,400, $567,400. The new valuation puts them at $1,008,600, a $441,000 increase, up from a $567,000 base. $400,000 increase on a $567,000 base. That's a 78% increase. even with Assessor Thompson's proposed $115,000 reduction, this would result in a total valuation of $893,600, which is a $326,000 increase on a base of $567,000. That's still a 58% increase. So what happened to that 30%, 1% average increase we heard about? I'm not going to belittle that because I know that isn't, but ours is so inflated because of that erroneous $379,000 valuation on our swamp, a $300,000 increase on a $79,000 base for a piece of unsaleable swamp. Therefore, we ask that you value the parcel 3100 as a standalone parcel as it is, because we don't need it for our parcel, we don't need it for an economic unit, and that you return it back to a more reasonable $79,600, which is a pretty good price for a swamp. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Assessor Thompson.
Yes, I'll try to be brief because our 2:15 appointment is here. The Nelson parcel, back in 2011, the house was assessed on the Lakeshore parcel, the 3100 parcel. I printed this map. You can see the property line. The house and garage and swimming pool, indoor swimming pool, appear to be on the Lakeshore parcel. The pole building appears to be on the northern parcel. I'm not sure why that was switched. In any other scenario, if this was, I can't think of any other scenario where this building is valued on this parcel. If our GIS map is cutting a line right through it, we value it on whatever our GIS is showing, unless there's a survey to dispute.
Okay, can I
So
respond to that?
can I have my 5 minutes?
I'm sorry.
Please,
I'm sorry,
thank
Bob,
you.
I wanted to-
So the saying that the Lakeshore parcel is not developable, in my opinion, whether this property line is shifted slightly north or south, this building was built where it was. The reason the driveway is so long is because they took advantage of the Lakeshore build site. You see the lake from the building, you can walk down to the building. I have 3 pictures from 3 different seasons of that shoreline: the winter, the summer, and the spring. And I can tell you right now, it's a beautiful piece of Lakeshore property. My comp analysis that I put together on this is looking at those 2 parcels as if they were one. Typically, we don't do that. We were just talking about Wanos, is that it was devaluing the Wanos property. But when you are taking the approach that Mr. Nelson describes, to say this parcel is not valuable because it's all swampland and it's not buildable, but it has 1,400 feet of shoreline. I'm gonna draw a line right here and build there, and this parcel is not valuable because it doesn't have 1,400 feet of shoreline. I've heard this argument, I don't know how many times, that when you chop a property up, you know, if you just took a piece of land that was worth $100,000 and divided it into a checkerboard and said, well, none of these parcels are buildable, that parcel is still worth $100,000. That's why I'm looking at this as one economic unit. I don't think that it does any justice to say building on the other side of that line makes neither parcel valuable, because this one doesn't have shoreline and the one with shoreline is unbuildable. To me, that doesn't hold a lot of weight. And also, I haven't seen a survey showing a wetland delineation. So we do have, what do we have?
14.
14 acres of the parcel are recorded as wetland on our assessment record. If you get a survey, which I don't know if I mean, I guess I wouldn't say that I wouldn't get a survey, but I would be interested to see what the survey says as far as what parcel that building lands on, and also to see what kind of wetland delineations. I do know that from my inspection and the photos we have are historical photos from the 3 different seasons. That lakeshore is valuable. In fact, the day you and I walked out there were 7 swans in the lake. And we had a little moment there staring at those swans.
Yep. In their foot of water. May I respond now?
Yes, you may, sir.
First of all, when we bought the property, the house was already there. When we bought the property, we bought 2 parcels. We bought the Lakeshore parcel, and we bought the parcel with the house on it. The line that Assessor Thompson is talking about, that put our house on the on the property was erroneous. It's been surveyed. The Forest Service and us surveyed it, and we gave a copy 7 years ago to the assessor's office because Kyle Oberg said he needed that survey because it was such a complete survey that it would actually shift everything north for the entire area. So our house was built on a separate piece of property in reality, and the house can be there just as it is in reality. You can see the lake. We can assess the lake by an easement. That's what they, that's what our contention is. It's two separate pieces of property. Now, as far as what did you call it?
A wetland delineation on a survey?
Wetland delineation. Okay, so we're going to get one of those just to have it. But whether you can take that property, let's say that it had in the northwest corner, because from looking at the overhead photos, you can see that the largest hunk of land on that 21 acres has got a big fen on the west side. It's totally marsh all the way across the top. And then I can tell you on the lake shore, if you walk in there, you better wear rubber boots because it's cedar, roots and water in between, all the way until you get to the marsh. And in the marsh, you go out the other side and you start to climb up into our property or Forest Service property. So there may be a corner where you could put a house. It'd be tough to get in there because there's a fen on one side and a swamp on the other. And I don't know where you'd put your septic system, but even at that, is a piece of land that's 21 acres worth $380,000? Where if a person could build a house on top corner, he'd have to run a dock through a forest and a marsh to get to the lake of 400, 500, 600 feet. And he wouldn't be able to see the lake because he's got a forest in front of him that's sitting in the wetland. So I think that piece of property is worth $79,000, just like the previous assessor set it at when he looked at it and decided it was a wetland.
Thank you for your response. Do commissioners have questions or comments that they would like to make?
I have a question. So the wetlands, we say there's 14 acres of wetlands on this parcel that we're talking about. So do you know? Are they go all the way down to the lake shore, or where that 6 acres left is that is not wetlands?
Well, from what I can tell on looking at the aerial survey, so what we do nowadays is like if you saw on the Wanos parcels, we measure out those wetlands and we screenshot it and we save it as a photo, like we have pictures of buildings. So the next person who comes and looks at it knows exactly what they measured out as wetland. This was done by Todd, 14 acres of wetland measured out, I'm guessing where the cedar swamp is down along the shoreline. You can see it's a little darker. I think the fen that was referenced is on the parcel adjacent to the west, but you can see that there's a cedar swamp along the shore. In fact, you can see it in that photo from, not the 22 photo. If you look at the 2021 and the 2016 photos, that is what I believe we are kind of calling wet, and I think it gets worse as you go around the point in the corner of the lake. Moving south and west along that shoreline, it gets more wet, right?
Yeah.
So one thing that I've pointed out to not only Mr. Nelson, but a number of property owners, when somebody has, 900 feet of shoreline, they typically aren't putting 9 docks out. They're not putting a dock out for every 100 feet they have. They have that shoreline and all that additional shoreline to keep privacy, to keep a buffer. That's where people pay higher dollars for more shoreline, unless they're a developer. In the case of a developer, then they want all the shoreline they can get for subdividing and dividing it out into lots. But when you're talking about one cabin on a property with a significant amount of shoreline, they're not usually taking advantage of their 1,000 foot of shoreline or 3,000 foot of shoreline. In fact, the Cascade Lake Sail, there's one dock. It's 2,800 feet. It's over 3,000 feet according to MLS, but we measure 2,880. We use straight line points. We always give the benefit of the doubt to the taxpayer, because then we don't have to argue about what a 1 foot or 2 foot difference. Again, we do provide the front foot values for these different lakes. A couple of the lakes that we're talking about are, and that what Mr. Nelson pointed out, are listed there with their front foot values. Holly Lake may be shallow, but it is a fishable lake. There's fish in there, panfish, northern, walleye. I think it's a beautiful spot, and I think that some of those sales of larger parcels support that valuation. I expected more of an argument on the challenge with the driveway and getting access in the winter, and that's why I provided a log home sale on Benedict Lane. Are you familiar with this sale?
No.
This is a 672 square foot log cabin. It's brand new, but it sold for $785,000. It's on an unplowed Forest Service road. They have 500 feet of shoreline and 7 acres for a 672 square foot cabin. Your swimming pool room is bigger than that.
Yes, sir.
First of all, our driveway is on an unplowed Forest Service logging road. Same thing. It's a mile long. I maintain that. One of the reasons I don't think our property sold for 2 years after the house was built, way back when, was because, well, according to Judy Machenbacher, the first time she'd drive somebody in there, they'd practically faint, thinking about how am I going to get all the way in here. So that was one issue. The other issue is this, since we've mentioned the swimming pool a couple of times, we have a swimming pool because Judy has terminal asthma. And 30 years ago, the Mayo Clinic gave us a prescription for a swimming pool because she has to swim virtually every day and she can't swim in public waters. That's why we have a swimming pool. It's bare concrete, plastic walls, there's nothing, it's nothing fancy about that. Just want you to understand that that's why we have a swimming pool. It's not because it's a place where you can have parties or whatever. The other issue is, once again, my argument is that we bought 2 separate parcels, and they're listed as 2 separate parcels, and they're assessed as 2 separate parcels. And you should assess that separate parcel at the front of the lake on its own merits. You might put a dock every 100 feet, but the dock is going to back into the swamp. That 14 acres of swamp, I'll guarantee you, runs from the lake all the way back to the other side of the swamp. And so comparing us to Cascade Lake, where you can walk on dry land to the dock, where in our place, we probably have the only place where you could stick out a dock. That's where the previous owner had pallets laying down, only because it was the closest place. It's 300 feet from our property line. Again, we don't need that piece of property for our house. So we don't care what it would do to the valuation. We can still view the lake. It's like being in a place on Caribou Lake, where you're on the hillside looking down on Caribou Lake. You can see Caribou Lake. You're not paying for lakeshore taxes on it because you're set back from it. Well, we're set back 400 feet from the lake at the closest point. That's to say that this all has to be viewed as one unit, and that lake shore therefore goes from 79,000 to 379,000. I don't understand that. I think, like Mr. Wanu said, if the county thinks it's worth 379,000, buy it for 379,000. You'll give us an easement when you do that, but go ahead and buy it for 379,000. But then what are you going to do with it? Okay. I'll stop now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, you have a beautiful piece of property. I will tell you, there are lots of walleyes in that lake, and you have a great spot. I've admired it for years. So do we have comments or any questions?
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, Commissioner Hawkins.
So I'm still trying to wrap my head around this lake shore and how you determine the footage fee or what rate, I guess. So when Mr. Nelson says most of this lake on this property is wetlands, you can't access. So is that fact, I'm trying to look at your little chart here, how much you say Holly Lake is.
Yep. So, if you look, I have the field cards for both of the parcels. The one with the lake shore doesn't have a photo on it, so it's just a bunch of numbers and letters on a page. You can see towards the bottom of the page, on the left side, there's a breakdown of, it says 366 Tier 1, 366 Tier 2, 366 Tier 3. Those are the lakeshore tiers. And then at the bottom, it says LO, that's for lowland, and we have that valued at $500 an acre. That's a rate that even completely swampland would sell for on a parcel.
That was
Typically,
my
that's where
question. What-
so
what
that
do we
rate
rate
comes.
swampland
yeah,
at
We're
here?
looking for a swampland rate and we haven't adjusted that for a couple of years. That we may adjust it now because properties with swampland are selling for more.
It's
And
crazy to me.
we can't necessarily raise the acreage rate. One thing that I'll point out when we're getting to Skip Lamb's appeal, a lot of times when a parcel has one of those fens or a beaver pond or a small pond that's not a DNR lake, people build right at the edge of it because there's no setbacks from those, and it's a beautiful thing to look at. I can find
Mosquitoes.
examples throughout the county of properties that are built right next to those ponds and fens. But I do want to just touch on something. Rachel was looking for the survey that was referenced. 1983 is the only survey. And does it show where the building is then? No. Okay, so we don't have any survey on record. This is actually like a government survey. So it's not a property-specific survey. One thing that I guess one thing I would bring up here, since our GIS line shows the house, pool, and garage on the lakeshore parcel, should we not be valuing it on that parcel? I mean, this is the first time it's really been brought to my attention is during this appeal season of what property is the building on. I've heard a number of times Mr. Nelson say this property is not buildable. It appears there's a structure on the property from our records, and I don't have a survey that says otherwise.
This is the survey I gave to Todd and Kyle Olberg. This is the bottom two parcels. Sorry, I don't have copies for everybody.
Right.
And that the Forest Service and I did, and which took 3 months because we had to find the corners, which were in the middle of the woods somewhere. You now have 9 corners in Cook County, from me, by the way, that we established. And the parcels shows clearly that the houses are on the upper portion.
Okay, and that's useful to see. I would love to have that survey recorded.
It's recorded in the county.
I didn't find it either. I did look for one.
Forest Service did, okay. I will make sure that it's recorded, but your office has that, you know.
So it's on the record correctly, but, you know, my perspective is that if you draw the line and then build the house right next to the line, I don't feel like you should be reducing the value of the shoreline parcel, saying that it's not a buildable site.
We're set back for the county standards. We did not build it right on the line.
All right, well, thank you for all your input. We're running a little bit late, but I do want to give one more opportunity for people to ask questions if they have them, particularly now since the survey is being passed around.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Story.
Thank you. So, Mr. Nelson, basically what you're asking for is a standalone part of the 21 acres, or all 21 acres?
All 21 acres.
All 21
yes,
acres?
yes.
And you feel it would be fair at 79.6?
Oh, yes, because, as I say, that's what previous assessors set it at, Mary Black and, but anyhow, yes, I would. Thank you.
So I think when people build their homes back many, many years ago, we're probably not aware of a line other than property lines around where we're going to build. So that probably, at that time, they weren't aware of view of a lake, or, yeah, they were aware of a view of the lake, but the fact that it was swampy, they couldn't do anything with it. So the house was put where it was put for the view of the lake and not for any expansion. Nobody was going to build around the lake anymore because access, swampiness, the whole 9 yards with that.
Yes.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Mills?
Assessor Thompson, you know, us not having this on record, I think is significant, and so does this change anything in your thoughts?
Nope, actually, the record is set up where the building is on that northern parcel.
It's
So,
just the GIS that's,
yeah, it's just the GIS that would make me question. I mean, the assessment history, before that survey was brought to our attention, it looks like the buildings were on the southern parcel, then they were moved to the northern parcel. I guess if you're willing to sell it for $80,000, is that what you're saying you would sell it for? If that's what you feel like it's worth? You did say that it was something you didn't need to enjoy the lake from your house.
If that's correct, that's correct. I'm not interested in selling it right now. We're 78 years old. We figured we got 10 years left in us before we got to head for the home. So we intend to live there, and we don't intend to sell anything. In fact, we don't intend to sell anything because we hope that our kids are going to take it over when we leave. We have 2 sons that we hope will take it over. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills.
it does seem though that some increase in property value would have happened to that lower lot. I can't believe, just knowing all that's going on, that it would have stayed at that level. So I, for one, am not comfortable with it staying at that level. I understand what you're saying about the usability or lack thereof, and how that affects the value too. And I guess I don't have a good conclusion on what level I think it should be. I also hear you what you're saying about the lakes being different, this one being shallower, but there is still use there, and there is a public access as well, so it's another unique parcel, and quite a driveway though too.
Other questions or comments?
I'm still struggling with how a parcel like this can go up $300,000. I first was thinking when I was looking at the GIS, well, it's because of those buildings, but it has nothing to do with those buildings. It's just because it's on this lake.
So I don't know of many lakes. In fact, even Tom Lake is selling for more than $80,000.
Yeah, I
A
get
West
that.
End lake is selling for, $200,000 to $300,000 for a vacant piece, like a little lot on, say, Caribou or Tate. Highly valuable in the West End. This is a parcel where it's, a public lake, but the only developed area of the lake, 1,400 feet of shoreline. You won't have neighbors in the future. To me, when you look at this building and the 2 parcels, the value is supported without a doubt. When you segment this out and say the lakeshore parcel has no value because it's unbuildable, draw a line and then build a house right on the north side of that line and say that, well, it's not worth much because that lot's unbuildable, it's being utilized the same way. I mean, I see that you have a further setback, but I see that that's common. I guess, in my opinion, this is a 60-acre building site with 1,400 feet of shoreline on a lake that no one else owns private property on. And that's where its value is. Not by segmenting it out and saying, well, this doesn't have value because it's not buildable, but this 60 acres right next door is buildable, and it doesn't have any value because it doesn't have any shoreline.
Other commissioners?
One last comment. The house is valued now at $600,000 and some thousand on the latest assessment. So the house is already carrying the value of the property and the building there. So whether, to say that then that this is all one unit and it should be upgraded $440,000 because this shoreland suddenly is worth a lot more money. But the house has already been assessed and appraised. It's been taped. They've checked every foot of concrete in it in the last 5 years. I mean, it's probably the best assessed house in the county. So they've already assessed it and valued the house. So we're talking strictly about raising the value of the properties by $379,000 because Because I don't know why we would raise the $380,000 and go from a $560,000 parcel combined together to $1 million. I mean, the house is already standalone on its comparable sales, so. Okay, I'm shutting up again.
Thank you. Questions or comments? I'd entertain a motion.
Other question, Madam Chair. So when we're talking about this 3,100 lot, our assumption is there is a buildable,
Well, we've got 14 acres of wetland. We don't mark it as an unbuildable lot unless that's been proven to us. Even a lot that's substandard that hasn't been built on, we ask them if they have been denied a variance. I've talked with Neva, and Neva has said that when you have a substandard lot that's existed for, however many years, number of years, obviously you can't create substandard lots, but if you have one that wasn't built on and you don't have that envelope to build within, it's typically going to be easier to get an approval for a variance to build on that substandard lot. We don't have a wetland delineation. We don't know where the wetlands are or are not. So, it's one of those things that I think that there's really not enough data to say it's not, that it couldn't be built on. And in my perspective, that house, that log home and that building, garage, the pole building, if that was just on a 40-acre parcel with no lake adjacent, if you took Holly Lake out of this equation and just looked at that 40-acre parcel with those buildings on it, it wouldn't list for less than $750. I know there's 4 listings in Lutzen just in the last week at that $600 to $750 price range, and this house is probably nicer than most of them. So if you've got a let's just say a $700,000 house and building and 40-acre parcel there, what is the land worth? We did also review it, and after I did my comp grid, using a paired sales analysis, I called and offered that reduction of $115,000 from what was originally proposed. I feel like the numbers support it, and that I'll rest my case there.
Questions or comments? All right, I'd entertain a motion. I'd like to make a motion to reduce the 2022 land valuation to $350,700.
I'll support.
So we have a motion and support. Thank you, Commissioners Follison. Any further discussion?
can you explain that number?
That
I
was the
certainly can.
assessor's
That
number.
was the
Thank you,
assessor's
yeah.
Can you say that number
recommendation.
one more time?
350,700.
On the land.
So that's a reduction on the land.
That's where it
of
is. I'm digging through
115,000.
my
Correct.
papers, thank you.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any further comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So we have 5 to 1. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what was the valuation on the land then, at $379,000?
$350,700.
So you reduced it $29,000?
Nope.
But Bob, didn't you recommend $115,000?
Yep, that was the motion, was to go with the assessor's recommendation. So the two parcels combined were 465.7, and that will go down to the 350, what did we have, 350? 700, yep, 350,700 on the two parcels combined.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Appreciate it. Get back and enjoy that property. All right. At this point in time, we're running a little late, but we'd like to welcome Skip Lamb, Lamb's Resort, and the 13 other parcel valuations in Schroeder to come forward.
We gave you a half hour, Skip. It is.
No bugs. We like that.
Skip, you can come up to the
You can come up to the microphone.
Where the Nelsons were?
Or if you, I mean, I can bring this one over there if you'd prefer.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Skip Lamb, my wife Linda Lamb, obviously, we've had the resort since 1968, and we would like to keep it that way. It's a family resort. That's basically our business, and that's what we do. I don't do appraisals, and, you know, I'm here, I don't think I need a half an hour. I'm here asking you not to increase my valuations by 75% in 1 year. Family resort like mine can't absorb rates and fees in 1 year. Obviously, it takes us some time to make the adjustments. In many states and counties, caps are on valuations increases, but not here. My family resort supports 3 families, several seasonal employees who have been with me for over 20 years. I'm responsible for these families and employees. They keep me in business, and they depend on me for their income. I need to stay more profitable. Not having to lay people off during COVID, meeting my increased expenses was not very profitable. And also, they put in a lot of extra work because of the burdens from COVID. Even my 3 or 4 generation customers and guests are worried about me being able to continue the vacations for them. Family resorts like mine put several $1 million into the local market every year, not just one large sale or one lot. Fenstead's Resort is a family resort about 13 miles from my resort, located on Lake Superior. Like mine, it has a number of cabins, over 2,000 feet of shoreline. Both Fenstead's Resort split rock cabins on Lake Superior are similar to my resort, large amounts of lake shore, small amounts of cabins, and have not had any large increases in their valuations. As I told Bob, he knows anyway, Lake County uses $900 a front foot for the first 200 feet. They use $360 a front foot for the next 1,000, and they use $150 a front foot for the next 1,000. So there are no sales of family resorts in Schroeder or elsewhere that I could find, mainly because family resorts usually stay in families. In taxable year 2019, my valuations were raised, and this increase was what I thought was my 5-year reevaluation, which included mistakes in the past as well as valuation increases. I did not expect a large increase in the value for 2023. I paid my first half of taxes on April 15th and felt I was done. I opened my valuation notice on 2023 on May 1st and was surprised to see the 100% increase. I called my assessor. What I'm asking you to do is to not raise the valuations on my property by 75% in 1 year, and to raise it gradually over a period of whatever you would determine. 2 or 3 years would be a big help. That's really all I've got. Any questions about the resort?
I think many of us familiar with the resort, and appreciate all you've provided for our community and also for those people that visit the North Shore. Assessor Thompson, do you want to take the microphone so we can hear your response?
Oh, I did take your microphone.
It's okay.
So I don't know if we're going to end up passing this thing back and forth, but I actually had put the 40-acre managed forest plan parcels into this appeal, and I was going to talk about those first. Do you want me to address the resort first and we can go back to the 40s?
I think so.
Okay. So the resort is going to be towards the end of my stack of papers here. I did include the local Board of Appeal and Equalization log from 2018 where Mr. Lamb again appealed on the 40-acre parcels that are in a managed forest plan and the resort. I do believe, if I recall right, there was some reductions made to the resort before going to the local boards. I remember you came in and sat with Todd Smith and I back during our last quintile review. And at that time, I think there was another large increase proposed. Todd and Skip had a conversation, and there was a reduction granted and some relief provided. So this is a lot more technical than most of the appeals that we have. We're talking, I think, a total of close to $5 million of real estate with the resort and the managed forest parcels. So what I broke out here is, I talked about Lamb's Resorts, 100 years in business in 2022. They have 2,851 feet of Lake Superior shoreline, 62.07 acres. I think about 30 of that is in a commercial zone. The rest is in a residential zone. There's an owner's house, check-in office, arcade building. Nothing super fancy or new. Some of it well-maintained, some of it not. 12 cabins, 85 campsites, and a communal shower. And that's all on the south side of the highway. Proposed valuation increased 77.6%. That is classified as a homesteaded resort. They do meet that qualification. I did include this list of the classification rates, which was also sent in the initial packet for the meeting preparation. You can see the homesteaded resort offers a lower tier up to $2.3 million of market valuation. I think the reason that they created that classification is in situations like this where resorts and lakeshore properties were increasing in values. I think this was created in the early 2000s to provide some relief to those resorts that were seeing exponential value increases for demand of lakeshore recreational properties. So with the valuation increase, there was some legislative consideration given to a ma resort to provide relief from the valuations. What I've put together, the first box here is the parcels that are part of the resort. Their values in 21, the originally proposed values, and then we did make some adjustments that we recommended to the local board in Schroeder, and they accepted those adjustments. Essentially what we did is we combined two parcels that are on the north side of the highway, and then we took the two parcels that are on the south side. They happen to fall into two different taxing districts, a different UTA. So they can't be legally combined because they have two different tax rates. They pay into different pools. And so what we did is we valued them as if they were combined. We basically said, since you can't legally combine them, but they are one economic unit, we will assess them as if they were combined. So there was a little increase on one and a little decrease on the other. And what it ended up being was a reduction of 5% from what we had originally proposed, which was an 86% increase overall. You can see the parcel that's directly in the middle, the 1112 parcel, is going from 60,000 to 0. That parcel is being eliminated. It's being combined into the very bottom parcel, which you can see only went up $3,200. That's how our table systems work. When you divide out a piece of property, it's worth a lot more. When it's just a little additional acreage on another parcel, it doesn't add that much value. So I broke out all the campsites and the nightly rates. And then on the back page, this is going to help describe why the property was not being valued accurately. During the 2017 review, there was a reduction made, and I believe this is when the tiering system got skewed. What we do in Cook County is we do 100 feet on tier 1, 100 feet on tier 2, 100 feet on tier 3. So we only put 100 feet on those primary tiers every time it goes up over. So the first threshold is 600 feet. Then you go back and add another, you re-tier. You add another 100 feet on tier 1. So now you've got 200 feet on tier 1. I tried to break that down and show how it works, where if you have 600 feet of shoreline, it shows that you're getting 200, 200, 200 on tier 1, 2, and 3. And then it shows what that property's value would be if it didn't have any additional back acreage. And then what that price or value per front foot is. So you can see that the rate or the value per front foot, it jumps up and then it trickles down and it jumps up and it trickles down every time you add 500 feet of shoreline. The reason for that is because the subdivision potential. When a property can be subdivided, it's worth more. So, you have these situations where a parcel that's 399 feet might be valued 40,000 or more less than a parcel that's 401 feet. Very little difference in the front footage, but the utility of that lot changes exponentially. So that's the way this tiering system is set up is how we found, it's what they train you during the Minnesota Association of Assessing Officers has a lakeshore valuation class. Rachel has taken it, I've taken it, Andrew Beavers has taken it, and this is how most tiering systems are set up. In fact, Crow Wing County, Gary Griffin teaches the course. He's the one who came up with the formula. And then there's shape discounts, there's depth discounts. If you have a very narrow parcel that's wide, you do a depth discount. If you have a very large parcel with a small, there's a pie-shaped multiplier. So if you only have 40 feet of shoreline, but it extends out to 50 acres in the back, we add value. So there's all these different multipliers and reducers so that at the end of the day, most of the parcels are being valued close to what they would sell for based off of using the exact same criteria on every parcel. We're applying a depth discount when it's necessary. We're applying a multiplier where it's necessary. So now on that page, there's two highlighted graphs with highlights above them. So the top one is Lamb's Resort for 2022. This is after we went through and did our quintile review. Obviously, with 2,800 front feet, we're breaking that out, for every 500 foot tier. So we've got 600 feet on tier 1, 600 on tier 2, 600 on tier 3, and we have 1,050 front feet on tier 4. So the front foot value, if you divide out the value of the land, is $1,091. The next one down is what it was the prior year. So there were two parcels, or there are two parcels. They actually had it measured out with more frontage. They were measuring all the way over to the other side of the Baraga Cross Road. We stopped it at the Cross River. We stopped our measuring there because that's what is effectively part of the resort. So we've reduced the frontage, but last year they were tiering it as 200 on 1, 2, and 3. And then there was 2,544 feet on tier 4. There's no parcels set up like that we found other than the Lamb's Resort. There was, I don't know if it was done for one reason or another, but it wasn't how we do it. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of parcels that have this amount of shoreline, but anytime you cross those 500-foot thresholds, we keep going back to and re-tiering on 1, 2, and 3. So you can see that not only was it a tiering issue, but we also had a big increase in the front foot valuations for Lake Superior. They went up over $1,000 on the first 100 tier, the first 100-foot tier. So right now, our tier 1 is at 2,600. I think last year it was at 1,600. And that was because of some of those sales. I think you guys saw a couple of examples like that vacant lot that sold for $250 in 2020 and then $450 in 2022, January 4th of 2022. So it's two compounding issues that have caused such a big jump in the valuation. The tiering correction and the front foot valuation adjustment that was market-based. The next one down that has highlights, this is a sale of a property, a residential property, that sold for $2.6 million. They had 1,970 feet of shoreline, and it actually had 208 acres, but I've done what's called a market extraction. You determine the value of those acres, you remove it from the sale price, and then what you come up with is the price per front foot. We can extract the acreage value from the market and say, this is what was paid for those front feet. So what we did is removed the value of the building, we adjusted for market increases, and we removed the acreage at $3,145 an acre, which is very generous for residential R1 zoning. Part of that is based off of that 220 acre sale that we talked to with Mr. Wanos, the one on the county line. So that one sold for $1,320 a front foot. So Skip Lamb is still being valued under that sale. Now, another thing that's not even taken into account there is Skip's got commercial zoning. This is a residential sale at $1,320. Skip has 900 feet more shoreline, and it's commercially zoned on a lot of that parcel. So there's a number of things to say, well, if I were on the other side of this, if I was the residential guy getting a high valuation because a commercial property sold, I would feel like something isn't right. But when you're on the commercial side where you have more abilities, there's more development potential there, you can certainly, I certainly can concede that a commercial property is going to be valued more than a residential property in most cases. So with all of that, another thing that, I wanted to point out with the reductions, and this is actually better represented in the graph I put together for the 40-acre parcels. If you look, every time there was a quintile, there was a decrease in value. So I'm not sure if it was a result of coming to the board or talking with the assessor and, asking the assessor for a reduction. But we did find letters from the 2018 Board of Appeals, which would have been that quintile cycle, and from the I think it was the 2012, where Skip had presented appeals and was offered reduction and offered relief on his valuations. So what has stood out to me all the way back to the Schroeder local boards of appeals is Skip is just saying, he hasn't actually said he disagrees that the value is wrong. He's kind of just said, I wish it would be implemented over the course of 2 or 3 years. I believe if the previous boards hadn't been offering reductions every time there was an appeal, we wouldn't be looking at doing this over the course. We wouldn't be asking for that. Please do this over the course of 3 years. We kind of set this in motion with making reductions in the past. So at the end of the day, if the value is not in question, and we're just talking about, please offer me this over the course of 2, 3, or 4 years, that's actually specifically talked about in the training material, that you can't set it at anything other than the market value. So I have a lot of sympathy for Mr. Lamb. I know the family. I have a lot of respect for the family. Skip's a great guy, stand-up guy. But, there's 165, I looked this up, 165 resorts have sold since January 2020 in northern Minnesota. I found 2 articles about campgrounds and resort properties being very high demand in the investment world. They're having good returns right now. I'm not sure, all the discussion about the families being supported and the ability to increase rates and all of that, it's not something I can have affect my assessment, and I certainly sympathize with Mr. Lamb. Another thing, it's always tough when you're looking at such a big jump, but I do think that part of the reason why is that there was relief provided in the past. And, maybe it was just because the assessor couldn't show the data to support the number. We always do these increases, like if I bump Lake Superior up, everything in that land table goes up. If I bump building values up in a neighborhood, any given neighborhood, everything in that neighborhood goes up. But then when 4 or 5 people come in and get a reduction, unless it was based off of market data, or if it was just done out of a lack of market data, it's not following the market. And that's what I think has happened here. And what you see illustrated in that line graph is that the county valuations have now exceeded where they were in 2008 and 9, and these land parcels are still below where they are. That's not true for the resort. The resort is valued more than it was back in 2009. But there is a very high demand for resorts. We've had a number of resorts turn over in Cook County. I think the closest, most similar to Skip's would have been the Cascade Lodge back in like 2017 or 18. I think that sold for $2.3 million. They obviously don't have nearly as much land. They've got the highway dividing the resort from Lake Superior. I think it's easy to say that Skip's got twice the property there down in Schroeder. But there's a lot of subjectivity. The property valuations are not they're not an exact science. It's based off of formulas and processes that typically work. So I I didn't see anything from Skip that would say that the value is too high. It was just a matter of the implementation of it in 1 year, and that's what makes this really tough. You know, I don't know what the ability is to pay. I don't know what the consequence is of raising the valuation. I do know that the legislators were talking about increasing that valuation threshold for the resort discount. Currently, it sits at 2.3 million. There wasn't a bill passed this year yet, but that is something they were discussing, because I think it came up again in the circle of resort owners that values are going up, and now this 2.3 million threshold might not be enough to do it. So there's a lot of things that are out of my control, but I do think the value is supported in the resort, primarily based off of the one sale of $2.6 million for residential land.
Thank you so much. Questions that commissioners might have, or comments?
Just clarification, Bob. So you said this was, Mr. Lamb did go to the local, and you had made some adjustments, and they accepted those adjustments. So there has been a reduction on the overall that was accepted at the township side. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that.
That's correct, yep. So we proposed that 5% reduction, which was basically just combining, acting as if they were combined parcels.
Yep, okay.
Other questions? Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. So the lakeshore tiering, you said, is used in all of the counties, pretty much? What about, is it just water, or is Lake Superior different than any other water? The value?
So, yes, all of our lakes are tiered the same way, the 1 through 4 tiers. According to Mr. Lamb, they use 3, and I did talk to Greg this morning, Greg from Lake County. They do use 3 tiers. I don't know what their rates are for those tiers, but, you know, with Mr. Lamb, he described 900 on the first 100 feet, and then 360 on the next 1,000 feet. We do it a lot different than that. If I had a 100-foot lot valued at $90,000, it would sell for more than 3 times that much. So Lake County is a different animal, and one thing I can say is that although we're supposed to look at neighboring counties and making sure that, you know, right on that line, things are somewhat consistent, but I am aware there's actually only 2 enforcement actions against an assessor's license, and one of them was just taking the value that another county was using and applying it on agricultural land. That was something that they got in trouble for. So we definitely don't take sales from Lake County and adjust our property valuations based off those. There's so many different factors that come in.
Other questions? Commissioner Hawkins.
Well, I guess this is, I don't know so much question. I guess I keep coming back to this every time, trying to wrap my head around the fact that this is a resort. I get your comparable of residential land. Makes sense. That's your comparable. That person could easily decide to develop that and sell those lots off, make a ton of money. I get why that makes sense. Unfortunately, we're applying the same rationale to a family resort that's been in business for 100 years. And I'm like, wait a minute, they're 2 totally separate kinds of property. I get you got your job to do, but it is really hard as somebody who's grown up here to say, yeah, Skip, go ahead. Hope your family sells it all off. Oh, what a loss. So, I don't know. It's a tough situation.
Yep. And so in response to that, we are supposed to value based on what we think a property would sell for. Everything that happens after that is up to the legislature, like adjusting that rate, you know, it's, Skip Lamb could also divide and sell off that parcel. So if the person buying it was what they were purchasing it for, they would be the highest bidder. Maybe it would be somebody who would continue operating the resort. Maybe it would be somebody who would put in a brand new lodge and a bunch of brand new cabins. You know, there's a lot of investment going on right now. at the end of the day, we're supposed to value it at what we feel the market value is. As long as everybody's values are increasing, then the tax burden is spread similarly. What I feel like the problem is here is that there's always been a reduction offered, and now we get ourselves into a situation where we're ripping a Band-Aid off. We put a Band-Aid on, it sat there for 5 years, we put another Band-Aid on, and now we're just ripping it off. So that's, I mean, we've had that conversation in my office a couple of times, that this is primarily resulting in such a huge increase because we've always offered the reductions.
Other questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move to take Assessor Thompson's recommendation there for the 2022 assessment.
All right. We have a motion. Is there support?
I'll support.
Thank you, Commissioner Smallison. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I think it would behoove us and our community to, and this is maybe not appropriate at this point, but I think it should be discussed, to lobby the legislature to really ensure that we're getting relief for mom and pop resorts in our community, because just like Commissioner Hawkins said, this, I mean, it's another case, and I mean, that's what all of today is what the market is doing to the people who work and live here, and it's just not sustainable or affordable. So,
Thank you for those remarks.
Yeah.
I think they are appropriate.
Madam Chair, can I add on to that? I just wanted to say, the Association of Minnesota Assessors obviously can't lobby, so it would be great if you, maybe through AMC or some other venue, can put pressure on them. I fully agree that, you know, sometimes situations like this bring to light something that needs to maybe happen. So, you know, I know our organization won't do any lobbying for it, and it kind of gets interesting because we do contract with AMC. So what if your position is different from our position? How does AMC deal with that? But that's a conversation for another day.
we've had effective results with talking with the chamber too, and lobbying
Absolutely.
on that front, and that's something I think is very appropriate here.
Mhm.
So.
Thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Mills. All right, we have a motion and support. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I know we're running late, but I need to use the restroom.
All right, we'll take 5.
We do still have some 40s for Skip Lamb to look at, so we'll look at those when we get back.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
How far behind are you? I'm
Well-
supposed to go at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, so we're about 15 minutes behind.
Oh, well, that's okay.
Not too far.
Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. I hope I stay upright. I just got bit by a bee.
Oh,
And
no.
I'm having chills. Oh, no.
Are you allergic?
I don't know. And my whole jaw is swelling. It's really weird.
All right, you let us know. Keep us informed.
I end up on the floor.
I bet we have an EpiPen in the,
Oh, do ya?
I bet we do in the building.
Survey from Brady.
I'll run it.
Kidding. This is weird.
Oh, did Brady keep it?
Right here. The little red dot, but then it started swelling. And you know, I hurt here. Isn't that weird that I hurt here? No, I think it was a bee. Yeah, no, it is. And it is swelling and this hurts. All of a sudden it hurts here. I keep getting like shocks. Ah, too weird. Well, I'm determined to be here, so. I get the sympathy vote in,
Watch out for All right. Let's see. Let's see.
Right, right.
I gotta do it for everybody, so it's.
Oh, I haven't, no, I haven't said that. Is there a time that would work better for you?
The time that most of us can meet, which is that
Thursday
Thursday
afternoon.
afternoon.
I mean, would you prefer earlier or later? Does it matter?
You need to,
Right.
whatever works with my schedule. So Well, just so John feels
Yeah.
comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Most interesting thing that I noticed is the beta coefficient in relationship to the
Formulas.
Reminds me of algebra class. Lots of formulas. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for the short recess. So we'll continue on with the horse lamb valuation.
Skip, did you have anything do you wanna take the mic for these?
I don't think so.
Sure.
So I've got 1340s. Obviously, they butt up against Lake County. Lake County uses a little different system, but not too much. Bob has raised them for $1,200 an acre, and obviously, when I was here and 18 and 19, we kind of reevaluated them, decided we were good for another 5 years, and we were going to keep them at basically a $36,000 a 40 or $900. So that's where I was at. It's pretty much the same place I was at with the resort. And so, you know, some of them are less, but that's the story. I'll give him back his microphone. It's a managed forest plan, so basically it's an expense every year. You know, not only do you get the expense at the end of 10 years to have it evaluated by your forester, you also have to do the maintenance of whatever the trees are that you plant, or the plantations you thin, or the logs you cut yourself. And but it's basically a no-win situation. It costs me a couple $1,000s a year to have them.
Assessor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, there's a special classification for the managed forest plans. It's a 0.65% rate. It's lower than like rural vacant land, which is what it would be if it wasn't enrolled in a managed forest plan. So a reduced class rate to account for the locking the parcel up and using it as a managed forest. They do need to have a managed forest plan written by a forester. So that is part of an expense that they incur. I do have valuations for each of the properties on this map. You can actually see the very lowest parcel down there has the highest value, and that's why I printed out our neighborhood maps that we just implemented last year. If you follow the ridge line from High Ridge Drive on this map, the ridge line is right along the road there, so that's where you get that view of Lake Superior. This parcel down here is on the southern side of the mountain ridge. Everything up here is on the northern side. It kind of is a valley down there. Shows the valuation compared to the total valuation is listed there, and then at the bottom there I've shown the sale price of the 214 acres that sold for roughly $670,000. That's a $3,000 an acre valuation, or a $3,000 an acre sale price. These are currently valued at $1,215, so less than the sale price of the recent sale that's adjacent. This sheet here also shows historical sales. It's all of the letters, the green writing. So you'll see to the north, there's a parcel that's relatively wet. It's got the fen and the creek going through it. Sold in 2016 for $45,000. There were some other sales. That 220 acre parcel that sold for $670, it sold in 2018 for $191, and then the parcel to the north there for $35,000 in 2019. That's the two parcels that sold for $670,000. There's also a couple of parcels that sold for more. Those are probably going to be influenced primarily by a Lake Superior view. So that is just a list of historical sales. And one of the things that I had expected Skip to bring up was the remote, there's not real developed roads or driveways. There is a driveway that cuts through going to the property that's in Lake County. So there's some paths and a driveway through Skip's property. The three parcels that are the furthest on the north side, they clearly have like a creek and a wetland area going through them. If you look at this page with the yellow dots, every one of those yellow dots is a cabin or a house. So it kind of shows that, there are people building out in these remote areas. One thing I definitely would agree to is that property that's sold on the south side of the bluff is going to be more valuable because of the Lake Superior view. But these properties on the north side of the ridge line still do have cabins built, still do have desirability. And in fact, there was a plat put in back in the early 2000s. Then this lists two properties that are adjacent that sold. And these are cabin properties, so they're not real relevant to the price of Skip Lamb's price per acre, but you can see that the assessed values in 21 were 45 and a 52% ratio. So clearly we had some value adjusting to do in that area. A lot of that was building, but some of it was land, to get those within the acceptable range. This is what I was dealing with throughout the county. So, as particularly in Schroeder, was 50 to 60% ratios, were very common. Even that very large parcel that sold for 670, we were at like a 50% ratio. The 2.7 or the $2.6 million shoreline sale, we were at like a 50% ratio. I mean, just everything sold for twice what it was assessed at. This is another one, you know, this parcel up here that sold for 60,000, it's a 40. It does have road access on the Kramer, but that kind of shows the difference that these parcels are being valued less than a road access parcel. And then the next page is the reductions that were made in 2018. And if you look at this and go back to the sheet that had all the sales listed in green numbers, you'll see that sale of 45,000, that's got to be one of the least accessible parcels with the most amount of water on it. And we reduced a lot of these values below that price. So again, I question the local board's actions back in 2018 of allowing these reductions. Actually, this doesn't look like it went before the board. This was just a reduction made by the assessor in advance of the meeting. So we can just make a reduction. If somebody calls us right after they get their value notice, we can make a reduction, send out a notice like this, and if they want to appeal it, as long as we've mailed this 10 days prior to the Board of Appeals, they can still appeal it at the Board of Appeals. So, this is where I say we get into these situations where a big increase is like ripping a Band-Aid off. And I think that if they had stuck to this valuation back in 2018, it wouldn't feel like we were ripping the Band-Aid off. It would feel like it was implemented over the course of 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And then, again, a line graph showing the valuation history of these 40s. So you can see we had an increase 1 year here. This big decline would have been partly from the market, but also I'm guessing that this year where the biggest drop was a quintile year. I tried to make the quintile years in bold. So that would have been 2022, 2017, 2012, and 2007. And you can see that's where the property value either, went straight down or went straight up for the most part. So that's really all I have on the 40s. I think that based off the sales, these 40s values are supported. I talked to Skip and he started pointing out the wet ones. To be honest with you, I think those ones with the fen and the creek and the little beaver ponds or whatever they may be, if there's a build site on those parcels, those are going to be the ones that would sell for the most.
Having a forest management plan is not having a plan to sell lots, so.
Understood.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah, I think there's.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Forests, they're gonna, we got some people that'll help us save the forest.
Well,
That $2.6 million land sale is not going anywhere for Anderson. And I do question the front foot part, but it's just a matter of semantics. It's not a big deal. So anyway, good luck.
yeah, and if you do sell property, the new owner can reinvest into the managed forest plan. That's again, I think why they offer that reduced rate for the managed forest plans. They want to promote people enrolling in a managed forest plan. It's a good thing for the forest. And there is a little bit of compensation for a managed forest plan, right? They pay per acre.
There's a compensation on what you pay in your taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that doesn't change the outcome.
Yeah. So that's really all I have on those. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Commissioner Mills.
Can you build on a forest managed plan property?
It would remove the 10 acres. Yeah, it removes 10 acres. So it's kind of similar to like a conservation easement. You can set aside an envelope.
Yep.
If they build on one without having done that ahead of time, they do get penalized.
Yeah. Thank you.
Question. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Bob, this was 5 years ago that these appraisals first came. Now we're in 2022. A most unusual set of circumstances has increased everybody. I don't think there's anybody in the county that hasn't had something increased. So, you know, we don't know, looking out another 5 years, is this gonna just keep snowballing and put a business out, or put people to say, I can't live here anymore? And I know we don't have, and you don't have a magic ball, but, you know, I just feel that we try to be fair with people in terms of valuations and what they can live with. So what Mr. Lamb is asking for is, I'm not quite sure, a reduction? What would you be asking for, Skip?
What I asked Bob for was to leave it the same that it was for another year or two.
Okay.
And, you know, based on the fact that I came to the agreement with the other assessor that this is the new price for the forest management land.
Okay.
And,
So you'd like to have it go out another maybe 2 years, to stay the same?
that's what I asked him, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion then that the valuation of these properties stay the same for 2 years.
Is there support? Is there support? Is there support? Motion dies. Anybody would like to make another motion?
I will make the motion to accept the assessor's recommendation for the valuations.
So that would be the total valuation at $633,000.
Correct.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. Is there support?
Yes, I support.
Thank you, Commissioner Akins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 to 1. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Skip. Put a letter out there for supporting increasing that reduction threshold. I mean, that will help you. You know, you do have 1 year before this value affects taxes, so there's a little bit of time for you to.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, Skip.
All right, at this time, if we could have Carolyn Dry come forward.
That's her. She's
Oh,
there.
she's already there with the mic. And while she's distributing some papers, Carolyn owns 1476 Croffville Road, Unit 8. And it includes a 320-square-foot house on 3/100ths of an acre of land on Lake Superior shoreline, and is part of an HOA.
Okay, thank you for listening. You see this red spot on here?
Yep.
Mr. Did you intend to hand that out? I think there's only one copy.
No, that's fine.
Oh, okay.
So that's my cabin. This is the shared land. I own only that spot. I share this land with 10 other people, with 10 other owners. Okay, so when I bought the cabin for $277,500,
Just so that the people at home can hear as
Yeah,
well.
usually we have folks sit at the
Yeah.
microphone there.
Yeah, better to sit down.
okay, so when I bought it, it was valued at $160,000, and the cabin itself was $34,000, and the land was $125,000. So when you're evaluating this, you know, you can't go by the price that I paid for it and then add a percentage onto it. Do you see what my point is? So we're taxed for the overall land as a group, and then we're taxed individually for the cabins, for each cabin. So I pay two sets of taxes. One is for my cabin, and one is for my tenth of the land tax. Okay, so when I bought the cabin, I paid for both. Okay, so you can't, as a way of appraising it, you can't just add on a percentage to the price, because then you're adding, we've already paid for the land, so we're paying twice. You see my point? So, the other thing is, that I gave you two comparables that I got from, I think his name was Mr. Bayer or something that works for your office. And I handed out those two comparables. If you look at the first one on Croftville Road, this one.
Okay.
Okay, it's assessed at, going to be valued at $475, and it's 900 square feet. It's winterized, and it owns the shoreline. And the value of that is $500 a square foot. If my assessment goes, and the other one is similar, it's about 900 that I was given. I was only given these two. This one is 900 square feet, and that proposed valuation is $507,000. So again, it's worth about $500 a square foot. My cabin, with no shoreline ownership, is valued at this assessed value, for the proposed assessed value, at $1,000 a square foot. Twice those. It's a seasonal cabin. I have no heat. I've done no repairs on it. And yet it's valued at twice the square footage for cabins where they own the land on the shore, and they're winterized, and they're much larger. They're regular homes, they're not a cabin. They've got heat and, you know, all those other niceties. We do have running water and septic. So, that's it. And then, the land, it was valued in, the last time, it was $160,000. And now it's supposed to be valued at $347,000, which, you know, and again, the building was valued, of the $160,000, the building was valued at $35,000. So it's 22% of the overall value is for the building, and the rest is for the shared land, which we pay separately. So it's kind of an apples and oranges situation, I would say. These are not comparables at all. And we're being double taxed, because if I'm paying that, based on the price that I paid for it, I paid for the land and the cabin, or the shared land and the cabin in the price. So adding the certain percentage, whatever it is, up to $347 is double taxing, because we're paying taxes on the shared land separately. Do you get what I'm talking about? You have the most puzzled look on your face.
Well, that's just a burn.
Sorry.
We could get into that story, but we won't.
We won't share his story.
No, no, I'm following what you're saying. I
Okay,
don't
good.
fully understand the discrepancy, because both it's a unique situation with the HOA there, and I'm not all that
For
familiar
sure,
with it.
For
so,
sure,
yeah.
it's unique, and that's why I decided to come, because you can't just go, you know, in other cases, you can go by the price, you know, and that's what you're supposed to do, I guess. But in this case, because you share, I own no waterfront, I share 1/10 of the waterfront with everybody else and all the other back parts. But that's taxed separately. So I should just pay for the cabin itself in this valuation. And then, you know, you've already evaluated the land separately. And I think we pay like I don't know what we pay on that.
Assessor Thompson.
Yeah, so this is extremely complex. It's hard for a lot of people to understand. It's hard for me to explain it to people. when they have the HOA and the common element land, how that's taxed. So I had an appeal early in the season where I almost had to go all the way into preparing like illustration examples of how this works. And last fall, we actually had somebody calling and saying, why is this parcel not paying taxes? And it was a common element parcel over at the Lutzen Resort. So there's confusion all around on this one. But essentially, if you think of it this way, if you take a 40-acre parcel and it's one piece of land, it's taxed, right? It's rural vacant land. A developer comes in, let's say they plat out 10 lots, and then there's common elements surrounding all of it. Well, it depends how they set up the association's documents, whether that common element land is something that gets its own tax bill. So it's always valued. We value everything. If it gets its own tax bill and the HOA takes care of it, or if the value of the common element is attributed to the buildings and the postage stamp parcels. So that common element always pays taxes, just who's paying it and where. If the HOA documents say that the property taxes are apportioned to the individual parcels, the people who own the common elements on a percentage basis, then what we would do is we set the value of the common area, and then we take those postage stamp lots, and whatever they're selling for, say they're selling for $50,000, whatever their percentage of the common value, so let's say that percentage of the common value is $12,000, then we set the value of the postage stamp at the other 38. So what it's valued at is what it sells for, and it covers the tax bill on everything. Now, if you set it up the other way, sometimes they do it when the common element is something that could have its own utility someday. You know, say the association wants to sell this land to a developer. Then it's typically set up where it gets its own tax bill, because it's harder to figure it out, harder to separate it out once it's been attributed to the parcel values. So what Mr. I has is a postage stamp parcel that gets a tax bill, and we are valuing that for what we feel it's worth, and essentially it is that sale price plus a percentage that the Department of Revenue gave us. Now, that additional common element, I kind of agree with you that you shouldn't be paying more taxes on it, but it's not set up that way.
What's not set up that way?
The homeowners association didn't set it up so that the property taxes are allocated to the parcels. They have set it up so that it's valued and taxed, getting its own tax statement. So normally what happens is, you know, you pay an HOA due monthly, right?
Right.
So normally that HOA due is going to cover that assessment on that property. That association is small. I'm not sure how it was set up. Maybe it wasn't set up by a real estate attorney, but there is there is a solution that if the HOA wants to vote to allocate that land value into the parcels and have the tax bill distributed evenly, your property value, that the ones that you get for your house, wouldn't change, because that's what it's worth, that's what you paid for it, but the tax bill on the other parcel would completely go away.
I find what you're saying confusing, because we do pay, I pay money every month, and that pays for the shared land taxes.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we're set up.
That's what I'm saying.
So therefore, if you're charging my cabin for the taxes for the shared land and my cabin, then aren't I paying twice?
It does appear that way, but unless it's set up in the association documents, I can't send a tax bill for a property to someone else. I need a document to make that happen.
What do you mean to send to somebody else? What are you talking
So
about?
the HOA has not created in the declarations, in the constitutions of their association, that those taxes get attributed to the parcels. They have to do that. I can show you an example of it if you'd like.
But you just said you have two choices. One choice is they're attributed to the parcels.
Yep.
And the other one is you pay the shared land separately, which is what we do.
Right.
What's wrong with that?
So it's receiving its own tax bill, and it's not being attributed to the value of your building, your
Yes.
structure.
What's wrong with that?
Well, it's not set up the way that, it sounds like you want it set up the other way. You want it set up so that you only receive one tax bill, and it's on the value of what you paid for it, and that there's no tax bill.
No, I'm saying the exact opposite. I'm saying the exact opposite.
Okay.
I'm saying I pay in, and I have two tax bills. One tax bill is for the shared land, and one tax bill is for my cabin.
I understand that. So so you want just one tax bill, right? You say you're being double taxed.
I'm saying that my cabin should be taxed as a cabin, and the land that I own a tenth of should be taxed, and is taxed separately as it is now. Therefore, I should not be paying for the high price that you have, whereas my cabin is only worth 22% of the value that I paid when I bought it, in which you're going from, off of.
So I'm a little confused now, because it sounded at first like you said you were getting double taxed, that you pay the tax on your cabin, and then you also pay tax on the land.
Exactly.
So,
That is what I'm saying.
but then you just told us that you want to receive two tax bills.
I do. But I want the cabin tax bill to represent the cabin and not the cabin and the land. So if you have Venn diagrams, here is the overall land, right? And here is my cabin. And right now, I'm paying for this and this and this.
Yeah. Rachel was gonna go and grab an example of the association documents where it specifically says the property taxes for the common element will be attributed to the parcels that own the common element. If it's not written up that way in the declaration, I cannot apply a tax bill to a property to someone else. You know, it's looked at as two different properties.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know, I've had a very tough time explaining the HOA common
I think it makes
parcel.
no sense.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for my clarification, Mrs. Dryer owns her unit and then has, as I understood it, 1/10 ownership in this common area.
Shared, and it's not designated any particular place. So we share it, you know.
Yes, we'd need to.
And I think that's where the issue is coming in. If it was called out that you were attributed 1/10, then the valuation could only include 1/10 of that common land to yours. Correct? That's what you're trying to say? Whereas in this valuation, you basically put the valuation of her unit and then the valuation of the common land with that unit? And how much of that common land?
It's usually spelled out in a percentage of in the HOA doc. So if it's 1/10, it's 10% usually.
Okay.
Sometimes a bigger building gets a higher
If
percentage.
that's the case, then we should not be paying on the shared land.
Well, someone has to pay
Someone
for the
has to
shared
pay.
land, and it has to be valued.
Yes, but if you put it onto the cabin, then that covers it.
But it has to be in your HOA documents. I think that's
right.
That's what's the question. It doesn't sound like that's what's in the document that your HOA was established with.
Well, we do act on it. We pay two sets of taxes. We pay for the shared land, and that's assessed separately, and we pay for our individual cabins.
Do we know the tax ID number for the
Yes.
other?
Oh, for the other one?
For the common?
I think it's 531456,000. I just pulled it up.
That sounds right.
I can
And
tell
that,
you-
I have a question about that, because it says it's valued, estimated land, 424,000, basically, and building, 106,000. What building is on that
Isn't there a
outline?
isn't there a building across the street?
Oh, yeah.
It's outside the line on the GIS.
Let me pull it up.
No, there is a building across the street
there's
that's
a
part
garage.
of it.
There's a garage right there.
Well, see, but how, that, it excludes that one and it
Oh, yeah.
excludes that one,
Oh,
so.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So that's why I'm confused what that is.
There's block 1, if you look at this, block 1,
Here's one right here.
there's a house on that, and she owns that particular piece of land. That's equivalent to a cabin.
Well, according to what we have on our website, Block 1 and Block 2 are not part of the,
Right.
what do you, I'm sorry, right
Off the
term.
roll.
Yes.
There's-
Oh, there's
That's-
one there. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see here.
I mean, that's the only one I would see.
Yeah.
So it just seems strange the way this was set up.
So the one thing I will say is if you go back to like, we started with a 40-acre parcel that's vacant land. Now, this situation, so what I was saying is that we value the common area and then we divide it and attribute that portion to the 10 parcels. Now, in this scenario, what we've got is that they haven't set it up that way. So if a parcel was selling for $50,000, we're valuing that parcel at $50,000, and then there's all this other value for the common element. That's why HOAs typically set it up so that the value is absorbed into the parcels. The reason why, and this would be true for, there's a development just beyond Cut Face Creek on the lakeside, and the HOA owned a large chunk of land. It was taxed individually, it was not distributed to the HOA owners. They just sold that land. So it's an example of the HOA can say, we want this to be absorbed into the parcels that have an interest in the common elements, or we're going to keep it separated out. And we're going to take the tax bill and divide it into the HOA dues for the 10 units. It could easily be fixed by filing a new declaration. You would only receive one tax bill, you'd be taxed on the value of what your property is worth, with the common elements considered.
Okay, well, to me, it's just so obvious. We're being taxed twice for the value of the land. You know, you're building it into the cabin, and then you're sending me another bill for the shared land.
And I think that's, if I may, Madam Chair, I think that's where the confusion is I don't understand where the double taxing is coming into play. I understand you're getting taxed on your cabin, and you're getting taxed on the land. And because there needs to be taxes collected on that, but I don't know where the overlap is.
Okay, if you look at this, is the last assessment that we got before this?
Okay?
And they broke out the land and the cabin, okay? So that's my cabin, and it was 160, and the cabin was 34, and the land's 125. See? So they separate out the cabin and the land, and they put them together in their, assessment.
And when
So-
when was this from? I did
That's
see
the
that
last
paper.
one. It's the one before this assessment.
So that was my question. So when
So
Ms. Dry purchased this for
That's-
$347,000.
No, 277.
$277. Purchased it for $277. How much of that sale are you saying was for the cabin? How much was for the
Well, in this-
shared land?
If you look at this, it's 22% for the cabin.
So the field card that I've attached here, this record is the cabin, it's everything. So that's why it's valued at $347, because if you adjust the $277 sale price with the time trend, it actually puts it at like $360. We're just below the sale price.
But your time trend should not apply to something that is the land and the cabin.
I
But
understand.
if you look at this another way, is my cabin, which is used half of the year and has no improvements and I don't own any land outright, right? Anybody from the association can walk in front of my cabin and do whatever they want to do. And yet it's valued twice what those comparables are valued at per square foot. And they own the land, they own the lake shore. It just,
Yeah, this doesn't make sense to me.
That
it
part
doesn't
I'm
make
following.
sense.
So,
Doesn't make
It
sense.
seems to me that the issue is the homeowners association. the
That's
way that
exactly
was
what it
formed.
is, yeah.
but where's the field card for the land portion then? The other,
The other tax bill that we get.
yeah.
We can definitely print out the common element.
I have
Here it
it,
is.
I have the numbers
Oh, you got it
somewhere.
there.
Um,
You're quick.
Okay, here's the, in 2022.
I just can't believe that
The EMV
land.
for all associated land and properties is $2,198,000. For the 2.6 total acres, 1.5 million is for land, and 679,000 is for buildings. We have an EMV of 577,000 per acre, which is supposedly higher than other places along the lake shore. But we're really not arguing about the value of the land tax part. I'm just arguing for my cabin, saying that, I'm getting taxed for the land and the cabin, and then I pay another bill for the land. Makes no sense.
Yeah, I guess that's where I'm at also, because how is the land, I don't know how much land was around, I mean, you said postage stamp.
Yeah.
That's why
Right.
I gave you that thing with the little red place.
Yeah.
That's it.
But-
Plus 2 feet.
That, that land under, you're charging, assessing for the building, and then the land underneath, and you're saying that postage stamp land.
But also the common
No,
elements.
look at what I gave you there, where they separated it out
So-
on for 160,000,
If-
that last document.
This one
That
here.
shows you what the value of the land is under the cabin versus what the value of the cabin is. When I tried to insure this, they would only insure it for $120,000.
Can I see what you're referencing? You're saying that the land value is $160,000. I'm looking at this and the land value is not $160,000.
No, it's not the land value, I'm talking about the last assessment on the cabin.
This is, I don't know where, this is typed up by somebody else. Do you have, like, the tax record? So there's an easy fix to this. You need to get the 9-10 owners combined to say, we don't want to receive a tax bill for the common element. We want it apportioned to the 10 individual owners.
Well, it's been in.
This is what the
for
HOA
many
document would
years.
look like.
I don't see why we have to change the way it's set up, because let me tell you, when you're dealing with 9 other owners, good luck. I'm treating our trees. I mean, you would think it would be easy to treat your trees for budworm. I mean, that'll never happen, okay? That won't happen.
So why aren't there 9 other owners in here upset about their property valuations? They all would have went up
I
pretty
don't know.
equally.
Because mine is the one that ends up, is the one that is sold within your period of time.
But they all got adjusted up similarly.
Yeah, they all.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an extra issue.
So to me, it's really cut and dry. I can't reduce the value of the common element parcel. It's acreage and frontage, it's units, that's what it is. If they want that tax bill to go away, all they have to do is set up a declaration similar to this. Their value and what they would pay taxes on is what, I don't have anything more to say.
Huh. There's no way that it's gonna happen. I mean, with 9 other people. So we're stuck with this organization set up like this. What are we gonna do?
I can understand that. I've been part of an association where it was very much a struggle, and we wound up getting a real estate attorney to help us work through it.
Well, I'd hate to get a lawyer involved.
Madam
But,
Chair.
yes.
My question would be, you must have a president, someone that
Yes.
leads this group. Then you contact them, and you say, we need to get together as 9 or 10 people and
Okay.
talk about what Mr. Thompson is recommending for all of you to benefit.
Okay.
You
So-
would lose nothing except for a second tax bill on the common elements.
Any other questions or comments?
So my evaluation is gonna go through like this, even though it makes no sense?
Well, we have to go by what the HRA documents are that are in place, and that's how the assessment
Well, have
is.
you actually read them?
The association documents, that's how we set them up. Based on whatever the HOA documents are, that's how we set up associations. So Tate Lake is a perfect example of, they have common element parcels. If you go on and look at what the classification is, when you click on it on our GIS map, it says assessed elsewhere. That's exactly how, the easy way to describe it is, that property doesn't receive a tax statement. The value of that property is divided amongst the common owners, and the common owners' parcels are valued at what they can sell for.
Have you
This
looked
is
at
set up
ours?
totally different.
Have you looked at our association?
I don't know that I've looked at yours particularly, but someone from the assessor's office certainly set it up based off what the declaration said to do.
Oh, really?
Do you have the declaration here?
No, but I have it on my computer.
Yeah, I mean, this common element parcel is saying it's being used as a seasonal cabin by an individual. To me, it seems like, is the individual who owns this cabin, is that the person
What
who
are you
set up the
talking
HOA? The cabin that sits on the common element parcel.
Oh, no, she bought that.
Steve Shack.
That's not him, it's Lynn Abergast.
Okay.
You mean the one across the road?
No, this is on the common element parcel on the south side of the road. If you look on the map, there's a little building there.
I don't know who set it up. You know, I know all those people.
There's a solution to fix this. It's by filing a document with the recorder's office to have it taxed that way. Otherwise, this is a cabin with 400 feet of shoreline.
That's one of our cabins?
I don't know whose cabin it is. It says Croftville Row,
On
co-owner
400
Steve
feet of
Shack.
shoreline? I don't think so. Look at how close they are together.
The common element has 400 feet of shoreline, right?
I don't know, but maybe, I don't know.
All right. I don't know that this conversation is being productive at all. There's two parcels at question here, the common element. There's a tax bill, it's classified seasonal rec. It's not classified as a common element parcel. If the declarations were changed to say this is a common element parcel owned equally by these 10 individual owners, the tax bill on that property would go away and your other one wouldn't change. It would be valued at the sale price with the time adjustment.
Is this a standard assessor's thing that you have to do this?
100%.
So if I call up the Assessors Association, they will tell me.
I don't know that they're gonna understand your question, but I can certainly frame up the question to them, yes.
Very good deal.
Yeah, I would,
I called the
yeah,
State of
that's what it
Minnesota
looks like.
Department of Revenue, and I said, who has the power to assess these things? And they said the county board does, not the assessor. That it has to be a competent assessment in which you go out and you look at the cabin, the individual property, and assess it with comparables that are comparables. These are not comparables. I'm sure nobody came to look at the cabin, and that's where we stand. I mean, come on. And it makes no sense the way I'm being taxed doubly.
I understand your concern, and Commissioner Hawkins, you wanted to share a
Yeah,
remark.
and so thankfully I sit next to Commissioner Mills, who's really quick on bringing things up. So I think I'm beginning to understand where this confusion came in, because I was on your side there. Until you start looking at this common element, and I think whoever set this up is getting a very good deal, and you're paying the price for it. So I would suggest you go back and change your HOA agreements, because that's where the problem lies.
If they don't do that, then we're stuck being double taxed.
Well, you're not being double taxed, you're paying the tax for somebody else.
Right,
is what it
exactly.
is.
That's exactly
what's
what's
happening
happening.
here.
That's
What do you
a
mean?
good
Who
way
am
of
I
saying.
paying it for?
Mr. Shack, it looks like.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm sorry this happened, but it's.
They all went up the same percent.
So
Yeah.
we've now discussed the common element and the land, and we've talked about a solution to fixing the concern here. And now we've gone off and saying that nobody looked at the property. I have photos of the properties with timestamps. We look at every property every 5 years. That's what we're tasked to do, state law.
5 years.
We also have comparables, and we've set up a comp grid. Your property alone with just applying the time trend that the Department of Revenue inflicts on the entire region, that supports a value of 360. We've got you valued at 347. I don't really have anything more that I feel is necessary for the board to hear.
So, is there anyone who would like to entertain a motion?
Nobody likes to do it.
I would just say it's very unfortunate in the situation that we're in right now with your situation. Unfortunately, based on what we're hearing, and I know you don't want to hear this, but the burden of correcting that is going to be on the homeowners in the association.
Why?
Because you set it up that way. Maybe not you personally.
No,
But as you,
you.
but my point being, ma'am, when you bought into it, you agreed to it. You may not have completely understood it, but
Right.
that's how it happens. To correct it, you're going to have to, as a group, come together and correct that. The board cannot correct this for you. There's nothing, literally, that we can do here today that would assist you in this. We have to follow what the guidelines are for these as it's set up by the association. And my motion is that we accept the assessor's appraised value.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just one last question. Assessor Thompson, I know there's a number of HOAs throughout the county. This is unusual, clearly. And have you run across other issues with HOAs and their assessed values?
Yep, the Wilderness Shore, I think it's Wilderness Shores in Tom Lake. They had it set up this way before, where the HOA dues were essentially picking up the common element tax burden. I think now they've amended that declaration so that now that's absorbed by the common elements. The common elements are absorbed by the property owners. And like I said, when you do this absorbing the value of the common property into yours, that tax bill would completely go away. There wouldn't be a tax bill on the common element, what you're calling the land. Your tax bill on the cabin, which is currently at $349, would stay the exact same, and the other tax bill go away. That's how you set it up legally, the correct way, so that there's not a tax bill for the other parcel.
Like, is there a name for this?
It's the apportionment of the common element expenses. And it's typically spelled out clearly that it goes proportionately to the owners individually based on their percentage of ownership. So this is a supplementary declaration to the common interest community of East Bay Suites, the allocation of common element interest and common expense liabilities to units, and then they give a percentage for each unit. This was based off square footage. So it's an allocation of common element interest and common expense liabilities.
And if I may, I would just suggest that Wildwood Shores sounds like a good contact to make with the board
Did
president.
they change? Wildwood Shores?
They did.
Rachel, was it Wildwood Shore? It was the Tom Lake Association where they had it set up the other way and then they allocated it to the parcels. Yep, so they rewrote they amended or changed their association declarations.
Would all the other cabin values stay the same as well?
Yep,
So they would?
yeah, I think this is what your desire, what your goal is to not receive a second bill for the common elements.
Yeah,
I can only do that if I have that form.
okay. So some lawyer can figure this out.
I don't know if yeah, a lawyer definitely could.
Well, we have a motion and a second and some advice that we have shared.
Well, let's
Any
record
further
that, too,
discussion?
that we won't pay the second bill. I mean, that sounds like a win.
And I can actually think of another HOA that set up a similar situation. The Joan Drury Estate, when they had the little development up on Mink Ranch, they kept a parcel allocated away from that, so that basically it got its own tax bill because they could keep that then and sell it to a developer someday. They didn't want it
One
absorbed.
point of information in your motion. Can it be that if we do this before the valuations are set in stone, that we can erase that other bill? Or what's the timing of this?
You would never get the declaration. It would have to be done before this meeting is adjourned,
Oh.
which
well,
we're recessing till 7 PM. There's just no way.
Yeah, okay, so
Or recessing till 6.
we're set for this year, but next year.
Correct.
It'll go down in the record
Correct.
someplace.
As long as you file that document with the recorder.
So we have a motion, a second, and some advice. All in favor?
Information.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Carolyn, and
Thank you.
I wish you luck.
Yeah.
We all do.
Let us know,
Well,
keep us
with
in the
all
loop.
the other owners, are you kidding?
If you have questions.
It's in their
let
interest,
me
too.
know. It is,
Yep.
it would
It
be.
is, it's in their
That's what I'm
interest.
thinking, well, that sounds, more
Yeah.
promising.
Yeah.
So we'll deal with it next year. Now, do we have these kind of valuations every year?
The increase?
We have the appeals board every year.
We do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, sounds
But
good
if
then.
you give me that form, we'll get it set up the way I think you want it set up.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So much. Appreciate it. All right,
Sorry, it
we're
took me
running
so
a
long
little
to figure that one
behind, but at this point, we'd like to ask Alan Payne to come forward.
We're all together
Thank you
there.
for your patience. We've watched you sitting back there. And Alan is one of the owners of 39 Camp 20, which includes a 2,576 square foot house with a little over 39 acres of land on the Flute Reed River. And we'll turn it over to you, Alan.
Yeah, I don't have enough for everyone. but I
We can
got
share.
A couple documents here, just to walk you through what I'm
Thank you.
looking at here. You wanna split those up?
Pass that down to Commissioner Storley, we'll share.
Get your exercise. Thank you.
I need it.
So if you go to the inside page, there's the second page of the document. There's a chart labeled estimated market value. The top chart is the county assessment of the estimated market value we have 2 properties there. And you can see it goes from, the combination of the 2 properties goes from $316,500 in 2021 up to $408,000 in 2023. At the end of 2020, we had a real estate agent, Julie Giles Carlson from Caldwell Banker, come up and do an assessment, market assessment of what we could sell the property for. And so you can see the amount there in 2021 that I have listed at $230,000. So at the time that she did the market value assessment of what we could sell the cabin and property for, it was basically a $90,000 difference from what the assessed value is through the county. So what I did on this chart here is you can see I've taken the market increases year over year from the county assessed, so 6.3% from 21 to 22, and then 21.4% from 22 to 23. And I've used those same percentages to increase the realtor assessed value. So it goes from $230,000 in 21 up to $244,000 in 22, and up to $296,000 in 23. So if I take those same market adjustments that were used, based on the county assessed, I still show almost $12,000 difference between what I would trend the value of our property versus what's being assessed from the county. Now, I've also included the email, the next page in the packet that I gave you is the email from Julie on her assessment, where she did comparables on different properties during the time. At the time she was doing this, we were looking at, I own this with my sisters. My parents had passed away, and 2 of my sisters don't live in Minnesota anymore, so they wanted out. So we were looking at a value so that we could buy them out. So she did the comparables on it. You can see she had 3 comparables. The average of the 3 dropping was $228,000, if I remember off the top of my head. She said she would value it anywhere between, I think the number is $225 and $240. I don't have that email in front of me, sorry.
That's
I
correct.
did keep a copy.
225 to 240.
So the 230 that I'm using is basically right in that range of what she said she would estimate the value of the property at. So at this point, I would ask that the council here look at that and look at the value of what a real estate agent says the market value of my property is, and use that as the assessment for the tax value also.
All right, thank you so much. Assessor Thompson.
So I am not real familiar with this one. Rachel prepared some of the appeal information on this one. I may have to defer to her. What initially stands out to me is that the market valuation from Jones Carlson is from September of 2020, which, you know, there's been significant market changes since then.
Would that follow the same market changes that you have year over year in your tax assessment, though? The 6% increase and the 21% increase?
So that's what you were saying, you calculated from 21 to 22 was 21%?
Correct.
Okay.
No, from 21 to 22 was 6%, from 22 to 23 was another 21%, so I compounded those as I did the increases year over year also.
Yeah, so you're talking tax year and I'm talking assessment year. It's the same though. 23 values aren't out yet. They won't be until next spring. So it says taxes payable in 23. It's confusing. A lot of people say the same.
Well, that's the estimated value that you guys sent me, right?
So if you read the top of it carefully, it says 2022 values for taxes payable in 23. So, but it's the same, we're talking the same numbers. Yeah, 21%. The increase was less in that area on inland. I mean, it's not a lakeshore property. It didn't see those 60% increases like most of the people who are here today. I see it went from 278.2 to 315.9. Rachel put together a comp grid. I helped her select some of these comparables. The comp grid suggests that the value is supported. I guess I don't even know when this appeal initially came over. It looks like the email to Rachel was June 16th. Have you guys been having conversations ahead of that?
Yeah, I think the first conversation was prior to that. It was definitely prior to that. It was in May, because we were up there Memorial Weekend. She stopped by and looked at the place while we were up there.
Yeah. So, you know, basically, I kind of have to rely on the grid that we've put together, and then also, you know, we also provided this ECRV for an example of land value. I think stuff in that area is going for about $1,000 an acre, right? So we're close on the land valuation, from what I understand. Rachel, do you have any other insight on this appeal? I guess like I say, I'm not super familiar with it, and what I'm relying on is this grid we've put together is based off of some of the most similar properties in the area and their sale prices. I did take, if you were to apply the time trend from last year's assessment, which this isn't like a standard practice that you would do, but that's what's going to play out in the assessment. If you take the time trend, which is 0.013599 on an off-water property, and multiplied it by 12 months for the assessment difference, and then multiplied it by last year's assessed value, which was 278.2. Last year's assessed value was higher than Ms. Carlson's market analysis. You end up with...
Yeah, that's my point, is your assessed value's been higher than the market value every year, right? So for the past 3+ years, probably even before that, I've been paying a higher tax burden because the assessment's much higher than the market value.
Yeah, so just using the Department of Revenue's time trend that they applied to the region on offshore or off-water properties, it would bring the valuation to 323,598. So it would actually be higher than, we went up 21%.
And I'm not challenging the percent increases year over year.
Yeah.
What I'm challenging is your starting point.
Yeah.
Your market, your value assessment originally is much higher. So you've been putting percent increases growth on that year over year at an inflated value of the property.
So what we look at is, you know, land value. That's usually pretty easily extracted from the market. And then we look at our building stuff. Your building is graded at a 6. That's less than the average in the county. It is a big building, so, you know, with price per square footage, that affects it. It's 32 by 46. There's also a garage with a little floor space above it, right?
A little storage space up there.
Storage space, yeah.
I mean, it's nothing fancy. It's a pretty simple cabin. I mean, you've got a picture of the outside of it there and what I sent you. I mean, It's a pretty simple place.
Yeah, and it looks like it could use a coat of stain. We were there and, well, yeah, you must have appealed earlier, because somebody was out there, Rachel was out there in
Yeah,
May,
she was
May
out there,
27th.
Yeah, right before Memorial Weekend.
Yep. Did we make any reductions as a result of our inspection? So from the originally proposed value, we've made a reduction?
Right, but it's not even close to, we're still talking 70, almost $80,000 higher than if you did use a market trend off of the 2020 valuation.
Yeah.
So the starting point was higher is my point, going back to
The
in
2022 valuation, are you talking from Ms. Carlson, or are you talking our
Yes.
assessment?
No, I'm talking from Ms. Carlson. Your assessment was high from day one, right? If you use it from back in 2021, which is the tax year, right? Hers was done in September, so it's pretty close to the start of the year. You're still talking $90,000 difference
Yeah.
from that point in time, right? So that difference has just continued and actually gotten bigger year over year because you're working off a larger number, right? So when you put your increases off of your value of 316,000, you're just extrapolating that difference every year. So you're
Yeah.
doing it off a bigger number.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I could,
Commissioner
what I was just doing now is on the 16th page of the packet for the appeal, looking at the comparables. There's the 237 Camp 20 Road. The sale price of that is $450,000. Site size is 38.79 acres, and it's a 1,600 square foot home. And then looking down at the bottom, the indicated value is 385. And so what that tells me is, this particular property is not too far out of line with what things are selling at, and that is how the assessed values need to be determined, is what things are selling at, not just adding percentage on from previous years. It's really looking at those comparables and what's going on in the market. Is that accurate, Assessor Thompson?
That is, and thank you, Commissioner Mills, for pointing that out. I was thinking the same thing, where, this market analysis was put together in 2020. At the time of September 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty still. In fact, when we set our 2021 assessment, we were very reluctant to do much because everybody was on the edge of their seat after 2020 and seeing what the market was going to do. I think late 2020, things started to kind of tilt towards the increasing market, but it really took off in 2021 and 2022. If Ms. Carlson was putting a market analysis together on a number of properties in 2020, it would have said something totally different than what if she did it today. Have you contacted them in the last 2 months?
I have not.
So were you guys planning on selling when you guys got this market analysis done?
No, it was used to
Consolidate?
buy out two of my sisters.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I missed that part. But yeah, I guess there's a number of parcels, like a Tom Lake parcel is a perfect example. In 2020, 40, 50,000 tops. Now it's double that.
Well, may I ask a question too? Did you end up buying them out?
Yes.
You won.
Yes.
The timing of that, I guess I don't know when that was, but that,
But if it was based on what she
If it was-
put there,
yeah.
then, if you were in a position, I think what Commissioner Mills is saying, the value of your land actually has
Completely agree.
certainly improved.
But if you look at what her assessment was in 2021, 2022, I've been paying higher taxes on this property for years now. And you could probably go back in time too, and we probably still have that significant difference, right? So you're growing my property off of a inflated value, right?
Comparables.
Okay.
That's how it's determined, is
Comparables.
comparables, not just based off of what it was.
Well, in 2020 and 21, the comparable said a lot different, right? So I paid more taxes than I was supposed to back in that time period because you had an assessment from a tax purpose much higher than what the property was. I would assume you go back years before that, your tax value's been up there. I've been paying a higher tax value for years on this property.
Yeah, I don't think we can go off of realtors' assessments. We have to go off of our county assessor, and we do offer abatements.
Actual sales.
And
and
actual
sales. And we do offer
What
a,
the real estate agent did, right? You can see your comparables in there that she had the same type of analysis.
similar.
that he's got here.
In
similar.
2020,
Yeah.
right.
And we do offer abatements for, different, what is it?
Yeah, so the thing is every year you get this opportunity to bring up the value. I'm surprised you didn't in '21. You know, that to me would have been a good time to have a look at it then. Or even prior years if you felt like it was overvalued. I do want to point out, like, one of these sales in Rachel's market analysis, the 133 Tower Road, that sold twice. That's Mary Manning's old property, if people are familiar with it.
Yep.
I'm going to just check, because I don't know off the top of my head. That property it sold 3 times. In 2019, sold for $247, so September 2019. That's a year before your market analysis. Then in March of '21, it sold for $260, so a nominal increase, $13,000 over a year and a half. And then in March of 2022, it sold for $300. That's a $40,000 jump. Percentage, if we look at the percentage that this went up, I mean, is it going to be consistent with kind of how your property valuation changed over the course of the years? I mean, that's a good example of things just aren't what they were in 2020.
In 2019, you said it sold for how much?
247.
247. It went up, between the sale prices, it went up 21%.
Between 2019 and now.
2019.
So take my 230 and add 21% on it, and I'll take that value, right? That's basically what I'm saying too.
Yeah, but the only, I mean.
That really makes my case right there, right?
It does seem to support your case when you're using just one sale, one example. You know, I'm not sure.
Thanks for bringing that up for me.
Hey, I really have no vested interest. I don't lose or gain anything off these valuations. I really don't. We just want to be confident that what our end result is accurate, you know, and.
And this one that you compared to in the middle here, has anyone been inside that place?
It's a nice place.
Okay, it's a nice place. Ours is rustic. It's not fancy, right? We don't have tile and hardwood floors. I mean, it's more rustic than that, right? It's not the same type of property.
Are you familiar with Mary Manning's property?
I'm not.
It's not super nice. It's an old timber frame with a couple additions. It's like a hodgepodge of additions, I would call it. It does have a pole building, but it sold for $300. I think your house is nicer than hers, and it sold for $300. I don't know, you know, what the value of a pole building is in the market is, you know, $30,000-$40,000. To me, it's tough. I think that I would rely most heavily on this grid, and I would say if the board is considering making an adjustment, to look at the range of that grid and kind of use that as a basis. Actually, Miss Manning's property, based on this grid, suggests the value is worth $296. It's the second best comparable, and it actually.
Highest what I'm proposing also.
When you look at the low net and gross, the gross and net adjustments, this is actually acceptable within a federal mortgage appraisal, the net and gross adjustments. Sometimes those get really high and it's hard to explain why.
So the 296 on comparable number one is really what I got in my chart that I've given you also. So if you know, we can come to 296, I would be happy with that.
Madam Chair, what were the reductions, or by what amount were those reductions, and why?
In the comp grid?
It was percentage completion.
Oh, the reduction she made initially after her inspection.
Oh, percentage of completion, is that, yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, can you talk about that at all?
Rachel can.
The cabin had flooring that was being redone when I went there. It had carpet as of January 2nd, 2022. But they were ripping it out and putting in the laminate, the wood laminate that, I did a completion checklist that we go through with all of our new constructions and determine the percentage of completion. I don't have that off the top of my head, but it's in your packet.
Okay.
Fireplace isn't done.
Yep.
The other things in the.
The
cabinet
fireplace
are
is there, but it's not got the outside molding on it. That would make it look presentable. It was beautiful inside with tongue and groove, but that's not about the construction.
So there was some unfinished construction that we had reduced.
Yeah, that's what, I was just trying to find that amount, or to
Yeah.
give me
It
perspective.
was
Yeah.
it's at 93%. We use a percent.
Okay, so you reduced it by 7%. Is that accurate?
Yeah, on builder value.
Thank you.
She's trying to give you money.
Any other questions or comments?
Again, I think comparable number one, if we go off of your thoughts there and my assessment too, that comes right in line with what I was assessing too.
I'm not going to disagree, you know, that's what this process is for, is to find out, you know, where it fits in the market. Looking at the increase of 2019 to 2022 on Mary Manning's 21%, it's like almost like a third prong in this analysis.
So I'm trying to understand what your position is. Would you do you feel that a reduction is warranted?
Yeah, and I can make a recommendation. I can
Please
make
do.
the recommendation to adjust the valuation, adjust the 2022 valuation to the 296 suggested on comparable one. Yes, so that is for the one parcel, correct? That's for the one parcel. It doesn't include the other parcel. Is that what you were including in your analysis, was both parcels?
Yes.
So now we have a big difference.
Yeah.
60,000 difference again.
Oh, that's another 40 acres, is that right?
Yep.
And so you were thinking 296 for all 80 in the house?
Yeah, her appraisal was for the entire, Julie's Carlson's appraisal was for the property and the house, both properties.
I think $60,000 for 40 acres is pretty accurate, and I'm comfortable with reducing down to 296 based on comparables and the percentage of completion. And so I'd make that motion for,
So we have a motion to bring the total value for 2022 to 296.
that's
And
for
then the
parcel 4100.
Correct. And then the 2022 valuation for 4,400 at 60,400.
And point of clarification is just that 296,800 on the 4100 parcel. But yes, otherwise,
All right. Is there support?
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll say, nice work. You're the first one to get a reduction today.
All right. And now we would ask Jeffrey Olson, who's been waiting very patiently to come forward.
What do we do with that one?
And Jeffrey is here on behalf of Warren and Mary Olson, who own 958 Clearwater Road. It is a home with 521 square feet in the home and a little over a half acre and 100 feet on Clearwater Lake.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you very much, Board and Assessor's Office, for hearing my case. Since you've reviewed my materials, we've actually had a site assessment. Andrew came up a couple of days ago, and we do have his results. And I guess I'm going to need to take those results back to my sister. I'm headed back to the Twin Cities on Saturday. And it's just kind of the way my sister and I like to manage the place. We like to consult with each other. And so I would like to take Andrew's, there was actually a reduction. I'd like to take that back to my sister and review it with her. And I guess as kind of supporting evidence, just as property owners, we're all interested in why assessed value goes up. We're also interested in why it would go down. I guess we want to just be comfortable with the rhyme and reason of the methodology, I guess, not criticizing the methodology. We just want to know what it is. And so for that, I would like to request, I'm not sure what you call it, the worksheet that you use in your site assessment. Is that called a field card?
Yep.
I was wondering if we could get a hold of the field card that was the basis for your information prior to the site inspection a couple of days ago, and then a copy of the field card after, just so we can really see, clearly, why it went up or down or whatever. So that would be my request, so that I could share that with my sister. And so for that reason, is that going to be a timing issue?
It is a timing issue. By law, we do have to have these decisions finalized according to state statute.
Let me tell you of some extenuating circumstances here. I was up here over Memorial Day, and I had scheduled a site inspection over Memorial Day, and unfortunately, the assessor's staff, something came up, and it just, I understand how schedules get bunched up. And so that site inspection just had to be aborted, and of course I had to go back to the Twin Cities, in which case then I was in contact with Andrew, and he was very responsive to my updated letter, the one that you have in front of you right now. And he quick scheduled, I told him I would be up June 17th through the 25th, and so he promptly scheduled a site inspection. And so it kind of puts me in a bad position just because of that, not because of my fault, but because of that Memorial Day inspection had to be delayed just because of scheduling issues. So I would ask the board and the assessor's office to give me a few days, do whatever you can to give me a few days, because those were circumstances beyond my control. And I really do want to discuss this with my sister. So what can we do? What can we do there?
I don't think we can do anything. The state law.
Well, first, I think what's important is you guys have reviewed the information provided, and if you feel he's made a case that warrants a reduction, you can consider making one. You have options to do things at this meeting. What I will say is Rachel did go get you the before and after field card.
Oh, wonderful.
So she's gonna have that for you right now.
Okay.
I feel like the value of this cabin is far more than it was assessed at originally. I feel it's far more than we reduced it from. People, Andrew was having a really tough time when I told him, make a reduction and tell him that it's worth more than that. And I said, when we go into this meeting, it's probably not going to make a lot of sense to the commissioners that we're making a reduction, but at the same time, we're saying we feel like it's worth more than that. What I see with this property valuation is that the land value is too low. I can't just go and arbitrarily raise his land value without doing it to all the neighboring properties, because that would be an unequitable assessment. So what Andrew did is he went out and looked at the inside of the building and got an effective age, got an update on where things are at when you actually had access to the interior of the building. So looking at the building, we said the building probably could use some changes that did amount to a reduction. But when I look at the land value, I think it's 120,000 on this property in particular. Yeah, $120,600 for a Clearwater Lake property. I know that there was a lot that sold. It was a bigger lot, but it sold for $500,000 a few years back, and it's real close to yours. Right next door, right?
Well, two doors down.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in my letter, our cabin used to be a resort cabin, and it's a very small cabin, and we have intentionally kept it the way it has been. We've got the original lodge, the original Forest Lodge table and chairs, the original china, all the original everything in there pretty much. And so yeah, you're right. Our neighbor whose cabin used to be called Cabin 5 of the same resort, that cabin was torn down. It was identical to ours, and 2 new structures have been put up on it. I think if we're talking about the same parcel, I think that was 1.84 acres.
Yep.
If we're talking about the same parcel.
Yep.
Okay. So, you know, the way I look at it, I just want to make a point that if you divide it out by acre, he's only paying, 119,000 plus per acre. When you divide, we don't even have a completed, we only have about I've heard 0.54 or 0.55. When you divide that out by acre, we're paying $273,000 per acre. And I think it's important to divide it out per acre just so you can like really compare. So I guess, I kind of want to get back to my original point, because of circumstances that were not my fault. I mean, had we had this inspection done over Memorial Day, I would have taken that information back to the Twin Cities, discussed with my sister. I could now be sitting at this meeting and, say whether I accept, whether I accept the reduction or not. And I feel like, I wish there was some kind of clause that would just, buy me a few days or something, just so I could have this conversation with my sister. And, I tried to plan it out so that this kind of thing wouldn't happen. But, I understand that, schedules got in the way.
I guess I don't recall the Memorial Day. Are we talking over the weekend? Because our office is open Monday through Friday, and we don't work on Memorial Day.
I had been in contact with Rachel.
Yep.
And so she was, I think, the first person that I contacted, after I saw her assessment. And so we scheduled a site inspection, and she was to show up on, it was, I think it was the Tuesday after, Memorial Day was Monday, so the following day, our assessment was scheduled for 9 o'clock. And unfortunately, we have no internet connection up there, we have no cell service, and at the time, our landline, and as a matter of fact, our landline is still not working. So I had to travel up to Trail Center to quick pirate their email for a moment and check my email. And it was at that point that I realized that Rachel, thank you very much, Rachel. That Rachel had a scheduling conflict or something, and so then we had to abort that site inspection. And so then I was contacted by Andrew, and so then that's how we scheduled the site inspection that actually did occur a couple of days ago. And we do have his results back from that site inspection, and I appreciate, so these are the actual field, what you call the field cards, or printouts of the field cards before and after, right? Okay, that's awesome. is there some clause that can
I was
buy-
just reviewing the state statute and the handbook, and I don't see anything in there, but here's a thought. If you can contact your sister this evening, we are going to be breaking shortly and then coming back and meeting from 6 to 7, so you would have time to discuss with her. The other thing is we can meet tomorrow morning at 8:30.
I will certainly contact my sister when I'm done with this meeting tonight, and I'll let her know it'll take a little while to kind of digest how this is set up here, but I'll do my best to contact her, and would I need to schedule a slot at 8:30?
You would need to schedule a slot, so we have 8:30 tomorrow morning, and then,
I think he's telling you they're already full.
are
We don't have any appointments for tomorrow, other than vacation appointments.
Okay.
We certainly
I'm sorry.
can reconvene the meeting anytime next week. I had the whole week off, but I'm willing to come in. What I'm wondering is, does his sister have information that's going to convince you to adjust the valuation? That's what's relevant.
Yeah, maybe what we could do is go ahead and approve what we have here, if the board feels that way.
Yeah,
That's what
I mean, my sister, the only additional information she would
So,
have is just review of these.
Are you finished with your comment period? Because I would like to go forward with our comment period.
Okay, I just have one more point to make, and this is not necessarily just about our property, it's more just about a category. If you'll turn to Exhibit 4 in the letter that I sent, it's that vertical histogram. The red parcel is our cabin, my mom and dad's cabin. And so we're in the 25th percentile of size. As I mentioned, our acreage is only about 0.55 acres, so there's only, I think, 10 parcels that have lakeshore footage on Clearwater Lake that are smaller than mine, yet we are, in terms of the tax increase, the recent tax increase, assessed tax increase, we're in the 82nd percentile. And so I would just like to bring to the attention of everyone present here that the tax burden is being shouldered by the small property owners, clearly. And that's all I want to say on that. And with that, I'll just let you.
Assessor Thompson.
Yeah, and so in response to that, I will say, in a comparison of front foot values last year to this year, most of the value is added to Tier 1, because every property has Tier 1. So when you want to increase all the lakeshore properties, you hit Tier 1 with an increase. Smaller properties do get that. Then when you look at that graph, the larger properties, if that's represented here.
Which graph are you talking about?
The
Exhibit 3?
4.
Or you're talking about the
Exhibit 4, where
blue
you
one?
compared the
Right.
site size to the percentage of increase.
Right.
Percentage of increase is irrelevant. I think what's more relevant is that similar properties saw similar increase, and you can kind of see that as these site sizes get smaller, the amount of increase gets larger or stays more consistent than what would be the larger properties represented at the top. It makes sense based on how the adjustments were made. To me, a lot of this is analysis that, to me, doesn't say our valuation is too high. When you take a 1.4 or 1.84 acre parcel and look at what its land rate is, it's a diminishing return. If you look at, when I sent you the email with all of the land tables of the county, you can see that it plays out. You can buy 40 acres at a lower rate per acre than a 1 acre or 2 acre parcel. 2 acre parcel might sell for 40 grand, and a 40 acre parcel might sell for 50 grand. I mean, it diminishes, and it diminishes fast in a lot of cases. We have a comp grid that actually supports values higher than what we've reduced the valuation to. I can look you straight in the eye and tell you I believe that cabin would sell for more than $250,000. It's a Clearwater Lake cabin. There's not one for sale up there. You can't replace it for $200,000. That's ultimately the question that I used to say to people all the time, I would buy that for $196. Will you sell it to me for $196? And all the time they would always say, no, I'm not selling it. The Department of Revenue told me, don't say that to people. They said, ask them if they could replace it for 196. And that will put that same type of question into their mind. Could I buy something like this for 196? And absolutely, you cannot. You can't buy a Clearwater cabin for 196. There's none available. In fact, there's not a Gunflint Lake cabin for 196. I'm not familiar of a single property in Cook County on a lake for 196. You can't replace it for 196. I think if you called a realtor, they would tell you the same thing, that if you listed that for 196, you'd be leaving a lot on the table. I think it's worth a lot more than that. We're only offering a reduction because the building record was wrong.
If I may just add a point, our property, given that it's so small, we're severely constrained. If we ever chose to perhaps build a larger place there, we're severely constrained. We can't go to the east because we would violate
Setbacks.
Thank you, setbacks. We can't go to the west because then we'd conflict with our mounded system. Unless a variance were granted, we can't go any closer to the lake. And now that the county road right-of-way has been established, we've got to be, I think, 33 and a half feet away from that, so we can't go to the north, really. So, I mean, we could add another story, but, and presumably for reasons that probably, I haven't looked at Andrew's work yet, but presumably he captured the fact that we don't have a well. We pump our water directly out of the lake. And if somebody were to offer us, if we were hypothetically to put it on the market, the potential buyer would say, do you have a well? And we'd say, no, we just pump it out of the lake. Well, they'd say that a well is going to cost $25,000, and so we're going to take $25,000 off the asking price.
Not up here.
Not in Cook
No.
County.
You won't have that conversation at all up here.
The buyers don't have any negotiating power
Lake
up here.
lines are very, very
Very
common.
common. Yeah, yeah.
Fair enough.
No, seriously, I think what the group is trying to say is, Assessor Thompson is sharing with you what the values have done. They've tried to make an accommodation for you here. And the things you're pointing out, that's true. All of the things you're saying are true for standoffs and things. We all appreciate that, but it doesn't diminish the value of what you have currently. You're right, it puts restrictions on you, and it would any owner downstream. It's true. But it doesn't take away from the value that they're looking at and what we're seeing on sales. That's the hardest thing to digest right now for all of us sitting up here who knew we were going to get increased assessments, still got them in the mail and kind of went, oh, okay. Right? But it's, they have gone up, and it's a reflection of the market conditions. It's just it's a hard reality, unfortunately.
Sure. Commissioners, there's actually a term for it. It's functional utility.
Yeah. Thank you.
The fact that property, you have a toilet inside, right? You have a cabin, you have a place you can cook, and a place that people can pitch tents outside, a place to park the car. It's functional. It's functional as a cabin. If a buyer started saying, oh, I'm going to reduce the price for this and reduce the price for that, there'd be 15 other buyers behind them saying they're not reducing the price.
Give you 110%.
And
Yeah.
waive all inspections.
Yeah, it's a reoccurring theme in this county that nothing is selling for less than my assessed value.
But just recently, in the last couple of years, it's really gone that way.
Really.
It's alarming.
We're all still trying to adjust.
Yes.
No pun intended, right?
It's true.
Well, I'd like to,
we had a-
Commissioner Hopkins.
Yeah, I just want to say, this is the exact same problem that I was struggling with Skip Lamb. You know what? People that have had these family cabins for a long time, really, it's not your moneymaker. You're not out trying to make money off of this.
No.
But, so I get it. It's really hard for me to say, sorry, your assessment's going up. We have to legally, but it is frustrating and sad for me as somebody who's grown up here and knows what's happening because somebody else is willing to pay it.
Sure.
And now you have to pay the taxes based on that.
Sure.
That's sad.
So I might point out that the increase is 21% with Beaver's proposed reduction. This is below the average, so I'm not sure, we're kind of apologizing, and I believe his taxes will go down.
Good.
I believe they will.
Because other properties had more increase than you.
Sure.
The average is.
So I'm
Well,
not sure
yeah.
why we're
But, I
feeling
mean-
bad that everyone's value went up on their second homes.
Thank you for the counsel.
Well, I consider a second home and a cabin, a family cabin, two totally separate things.
Yeah.
So I get it. It's because of the second homes. The cabins are also going up.
Gotcha. Commissioner Salas.
I would like to make a motion to accept the reduced value that was proposed of 196.3 for this person.
Thank you so much. We have a motion. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support for reducing the 2022 valuation to 196.3. Any further discussion?
So, I'm sorry, I just have one other point. So, I will still try to contact my sister tonight and discuss this with her. It'll have to be in Grand Marais, because we don't have any phone, anything up on the Gunflint. And is there not still an opportunity to come back tomorrow? I think I heard no.
We currently don't have any appointments scheduled for tomorrow. It's the board's decision if they want to schedule appointments.
But if I were to get to you by sometime this evening, what would the deadline, drop dead?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock?
Yep.
And the meeting might go past 7. We're kind of at the mercy of getting through these written appeals and anybody who may be walking in. Well, I again want to circle back to, was your sister intending to provide data that it would determine whether or not this assessment was accurate?
Well, no, this would be the only additional data that she would have, the pre and post inspection field cards. She's not, this is only what she would base her decision on.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But my vote isn't going to change depending on how your sister feels about that.
Right.
That's what we're trying to get to, I get. Doesn't really, yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
196.3. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Olson.
And thank you for waiting. Been very patient. Can take a break, a little recess.
Are we gonna recess now?
I missed this.
You guys don't want to hammer through these written ones?
No, I want to go and take a